Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me as, well, for almost as always, really. Frankly, you've been on the show now 10 times. Is this your 10th time, Marty?
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm part of the Platinum Miles Rewards Club for
That's
Warhammer
right.
Weekly.
That's right. Yes, you get free admittance to the Sky Miles Club now. So that's pretty nice. Your jacket is in the mail. We have a 10-time co-host club. It's pretty nice. It's an exclusive club, exclusive membership. No, Marty, glad to have you back on.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
of course, tonight we are going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the good, the meh, and the ugly. The sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of AOS 4. This is me realizing I didn't open up the other thing I need to open up, so I'm opening that right now. There we go. We'll get that rumor engine up, popped up right in place. There we go. The best and worst of AOS 4. We're going to talk about it tonight. But as well, we're gonna go through all the other normal segments. We're gonna cover what do we love about AOS, what do we think is good, what do we think is bad, what needs a little improvement, what needs some work, what can we still correct, and so on. Okay. Oh, and Marty froze. Either that or he's very good at holding still. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. Can you still hear me, Marty?
Yeah,
Definitely frozen. All right. Oh, hold on. He's coming back.
I'm gonna.
He's coming back. Okay.
Oh,
So we'll just let you catch up for a minute. It's okay. I'm going to go straight into the news. Uh, you may want to either put your phone on the Wi-Fi or take your phone off the Wi-Fi or plug your phone in or I don't know, whatever you're doing. Do something. Try stuff out. We'll see what works. It's fine. We were in for,
yeah.
of course, 10 minutes beforehand and everything was working good. We're working well.
All right.
Hey, there you're back, Marty.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that.
Hey, there we go. The flight's booked for VinciCon, the next VinciCon. Rock and roll. Good to hear, Adam. All right. So, let's talk about some news. First off, we've got a rumor engine. It's a 40K thing. I don't care. It looks like a Tech Marine thing or something of that nature. It's whatever. I don't know.
All right. I must have missed the rumor engine. My apologies.
That's okay. It's nothing. Who cares? At any rate, next up, we had the Skaven preview. Now I already did a review. I already did a little reveal reaction show on Saturday. If you haven't checked that out, you can go that to hear all my thoughts. Short answer: I'm super stoked about basically everything except the new Arch Warlock, who I think is an insult to the classic design.
Mhm.
But other than that, Marty, where are you landing on this? Where are you landing on the Skaven reveal?
Yeah. It was a little strange to see that not all of the pictures made it to the same community article. I'm sure
Yeah.
that was just like a little bit of a communications breakdown. I was very curious to see some of those storm vermin. They looked quite large. I don't want to say they were on 40s. I can't imagine a Skaven infantry model that's not like a rat ogre being on like a 40 mil, but it was interesting to see. I always like that
It wouldn't surprise me if they were on
that
32s.
yeah, that feels appropriate for them. I like the whole the new named character who's like almost like a Grom the Paunch version of a Skaven warlord.
Critic.
Yeah. I'm sorry I couldn't really retain their names. I did watch your review of all of them, and I'm glad that you really appreciated them all. Now it's just like that we've had the Skaven Happy Ratter Day. It made me think ahead to what else, like what is the low hanging fruit now? Is it like Gutbusters or something like
It's
that?
it's more Skaven. It's still more
Hmm.
Skaven. That's still the lowest hanging fruit because they still have Night Runners, and that kit was originally made in like
Yeah, that's true.
1999, so it's still
Hmm.
Skaven. I mean, like yes, full
Yeah.
army wise, probably ogres, foot ogres could use a redesign. Like you could do amazing things with ogres if they wanted to. I mean, the butcher and
Hmm.
the slaughtermaster are absolute
Yeah.
travesties, obviously. So
Yeah. But I know it was good to see all of that get like a nice refresh, especially I think the reigning champion was the Skyer acolytes who are like they're from Citadel Miniatures only, so they were older than Games Workshop as a company. which was
Mm-hmm.
interesting. But yeah, and it makes me excited because of course not of course, but we're more likely than not to see the Stormcast side at Nova,
I would
and
assume.
since yeah, and since we have so much, especially from third edition, rebooting all of these troops, it makes me wonder what we'll actually see that's new and inventive from that range.
Agreed. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the thing that was, of course, caused the biggest kerfuffle around the internet was one of the design sort of signifiers they did with New Skaven, and I
Hmm.
think they've done it with some other things as well, but they're definitely doing it a
Yeah.
lot with New Skaven. You can see it on him right now.
Hmm.
Is they have this
Yeah.
new like segmented cloth that doesn't
Yeah.
have visible stitches, right?
Yes.
You see it on
Yeah.
Critic's robe. You see it on this guy's whatever tabard pieces. These those that has a name, but I don't know. At any rate, and people were
Hmm.
like, "What's with this gap?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's not a gap. They highlighted it. Like they're not. They
Hmm.
they're like,
Yeah.
geez, I boy the Games Workshop's really going downhill." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, guys. You know that
Yeah.
that's not how that works."
I think it's an alternative to how they do the stitching because the stitching on Games Workshop models, in order to be visible, is out of scale. Like
Yeah, true.
the stitches on like Cruel Boy stuff, flayed skin, they're like in scale about 2 to 3 inches wide, which is a little excessive for like stitching. So I think they're just going for a more minimalist route, which yeah, it is just a design choice. I don't think that they're making a mistake or anything.
Yes, stole is the correct word. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
Somebody said I was a bit quiet. I'll see what I can do here.
yeah.
Um,
I unfortunately, because of the internet woes, I cannot see the comments this evening. So I'll be sure to look them all over later when we rewatch.
you're good. You're good. All right. Here we'll bring this up. Boo boo boo. All right. So at any rate, I'll turn myself up just slightly. All right. See if that helps. Um, the reality is on the thing. I mean, I don't. It's a weird choice. They should. I feel like they could have the technology to get actual stitching on there, but whatever. It's
Mm.
fine. I'm not. It's not the end of the world. Okay. So I like the Skaven. I think they look awesome. Other stuff. Other news. Hey, Marty. You know there's some old world releases happening. Okay.
Oh yeah, a few of us are happy that we will no longer have to pay eBay prices.
Yeah. Now I don't. I will admit I don't care about the dwarves and the orc and goblin stuff being released. That's fine. But the I will say they are re-releasing all of the old scenery. Now I couldn't get a picture of it because they've
Mhm.
made it that silly rotating thing that I can't take pictures off of. I can't steal their photos.
Yeah.
But boy oh boy, the all the good like buildings and tower and the arcane gates or whatever coming back. I love those. My Maw Crusher, he's right
Oh yeah.
there, is
Yeah.
on those gates. I love those things. I still have a couple of those stones left. I pieced that thing out very carefully over the years. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Oh yeah.
great stuff.
I
I'm
have
very excited about that scenery coming back.
the fortified manor built and on a larger piece of terrain that I have yet to paint. I was kind of saving it for if I were to run events with my own terrain more regularly. So I think I'll finally pull that out and be able to paint it because I'll be able to replace it with like a newer kit. It's good because some of this stuff goes on eBay for 2 to 300 US dollars. Absolutely insane. Even if they overcharge for these kits by any estimation, it will still be cheaper.
Yeah,
These are perfect for decorating even a regular minimalist Age of Sigmar display board. We no longer have to borrow Lord of the Rings kits for some of our pieces, and now we can even mix and match Lord of the Rings and Warhammer Fantasy. We have a gluttony of choice, and uh, I think out of all of that, I'm probably going to pick up another fortified manor because it has one of everything. But
right.
if I had to pick just one of those, just the little what's the mini tower? Just like the watchtower. I think a watchtower is just perfect on any home gaming board.
Agreed. What I
Yeah.
always think of when I think of that is I think of the of Steve Herner's incredible board, right? Because he has
Yes.
a bunch of that terrain worked into his boards, and so I love how he did them. I think they look
Mhm.
great. I'm happy to see them be available again. Yeah, so
Yeah. Can't think of a better endorsement. Thanks to Games Workshop, you too can have a touch of Steve Herner's tables at home
that's
for
right.
your enjoyment.
That's right. So great that those are back. Good to hear them. I mean, there's like a lot of 3D printed stuff now that competes with that, but they're good kits, and I'm glad they're available again. Those Arcane Ruins are fantastic.
Mhm.
Uh, Next up, what is this I have here, Marty? But the NashCon faction breakdown. Okay, I know it's in very tiny
Yeah.
text. We'll zoom in. Enhance. There we go. We'll zoom in and out. Okay. So this is NashCon is this weekend. Very much looking forward to it. Heading out in
Hmm.
a couple of days to go down there. Hope to see a bunch of people down there. I know Steve Herner's going to be there. I think Reed's going to be there as well. The Herner clan rolling out en masse. I saw Steve's army that he put together. It looks exceptionally cool. Absolutely amazing. I have a couple of I have a very fun, unusual, weird plan, as people will find out when I get there. Um, but
Yeah.
let's just say I'm doing something a bit unorthodox this year. Anyways, because
Is it
Tom,
more unorthodox than Whirlwind Edge?
well, it's not army unorthodox. You'll see. Yeah, people will see.
Okay.
At any rate, the uh, we'll talk about some of these. What I wanted to talk about was that's factions that are here, Marty, because this is from,
Hmm.
of course, our good friend Anthony Pulcastro, who is in the chat, Crazy Horse, and he shared out the faction breakdown. The list submission deadline was last Sunday. I'm sure there's still Anthony, as you're in the chat, how many unsubmitted lists do we actually have? Like, what does this represent? How many are we missing? I know the deadline was Sunday. I got mine in like the day before or whatever. That's Saturday. But I'm curious as to what people like. How many are we still missing, Anthony, out of all the people registered? Okay, and what's our total registered? Hit me with them stats. At any rate, Marty, here we go. What do you think, Marty,
Hmm.
the number one faction is? Since you're not looking at this directly, if you had to guess.
Well, first of all, I can only see you because I'm on the Discord thing and I cannot see the screen. So if I
I
had to
understand.
guess,
Yes,
it would be Night Haunt.
you would be correct. Congratulations! Ding, ding, ding.
I do have a little bit of a cheat in the anecdote of, except for you, everyone that I know who I have spoken to in the past week who is going to Nashon is taking Night Haunt. So
Well, I look forward to getting absolutely wrecked. It's going to be a good time. Night Haunt have 11 entries. I am ready to dwell at the bottom tables and get slaughtered. I've played this matchup with the army I'm bringing. I have never
mhm.
won it. I've never lived past battle round 2 with the army I'm
Oh wow.
playing against Night Haunt. So, I mean, let's go.
Yeah.
I'll have fast games. It's because statistically, I'm going to play Ghosts somewhere. At any rate, yes,
Gotcha.
Night Haunt with 11 people. Anthony said there are 4 unsubmitted people. Maybe they'll all bring Night Haunt too. At any rate, but I wanted to point out here, Marty, there's only one army that only has one person bringing it. Can you guess, Marty, what army only has one lonely person bringing it? Now, there are 2 zeros, Beast of Chaos and Bone Splitters. Not surprising, really, in the
Yeah.
end. But can you guess the army that
Uh,
only has one?
I'm only going to base this on the anecdotes I've seen, and my
Okay.
guess is going to be Daughters of Cain.
It is not. It is
All right.
not. It is, we will zoom in here. It is the Hedonites of Slanesh.
Is that
Marty,
you?
that is me.
I did think
Standing
you were going to
alone,
bring Skaven
baby.
of some sort.
Yes, I caught that and I was like, yay! It's just me. I can turn myself up more. I don't know why
Yeah.
it doesn't register me as any quieter. There. All right, I should be much louder now. Tell me if that's too loud, everybody, compared to Marty. I can
Yeah, I
also
was about
turn
to say
Marty
you
down
sound
a little
perfect.
bit.
Okay, I was about to say you sound perfectly normal to me.
I know. When I tested it beforehand, we sounded fine, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just the way things are sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'll bring Marty down a little more. There you go. I've equalized this out a little bit. At any rate,
Yeah. Um,
um, yeah. So I thought that was really funny that I'm the only Slanesh player, and I'm rolling into this. Marty, I've been practicing. I've been practicing handing out 3 dice every round, playing the way that God intended. I only hand out. I played 3 full. I played 3 games this weekend, 3 test games in one day, back to back to back. Okay,
yes.
and in every round of every game, I handed out 3 dice, unquestioningly, every time. It is, uh, it is very hard. It is a very hard way to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. I played against 2 Slanesh players when I was at Warhammer World. Very skilled, very good players. They only handed out 1 dice.
Of course.
Yeah.
Like that's yeah, exactly. Catharsis says I'm playing the long game, go like 0-5, so it's so that I can sink the stats further and give them the attention they need. Yeah. Okay. So at any rate, I thought that was just a fun little thing. But there's lots of good representation across the board. I was sad to see only 2 Iron Jaws, but I'm not surprised there. Your second most popular fashion is, of course, S2D. Cruel Boys also with some heavy representation, as well as Seraphon and Lumineth. A lot of your classic offenders here, and as well as
Hmm.
top, like top performers. So a little bit of everything.
I
All
do.
right.
I do want. I'm sorry. Just one. I was
Good.
about to say just one thing. I do wonder one day when we eventually get our successor to Wood Elves in full, if people who are High Elf enjoyers find their new home. It'll be interesting to see.
Who
Anyway, that was
knows?
just personal. Yeah.
No issue. All right.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully, I've equalized our sound a little better now. I looked. I'm watching the voice meter, and it looks a little more equalized. We'll see. Go ahead and talk for me, Marty. Say something.
Test.
You're still a little
Warhammer
higher.
Weekly. Yeah.
You're still a little higher, but that's okay. That's all right. Hopefully, then I've balanced it back out. The audience will tell
Yeah.
me. Is he all right now? Audience, does he sound okay? It looks in my equalizer. It looks like he's all right. Fancy Teeth says I played my 12 Giselle Skaven list just now. Very very fun. Well, I assume for one of you. I assume one of you had a great time. The other person, I don't know. Pick up your toys, mate. All right. With that, Marty, let's go to some pick of the week. What would you like to share with everybody?
Guerrilla Miniature Games. Ash Barker put out his industry podcast. I cannot remember the name of the podcast off the top of my head, but I at
Inside
least remember
Tabletop.
Inside Tabletop. And this week he did a topic on basically reviewing the nuts and bolts of the Skaven Tide box as a release, and not just what's in it, its impact on the market, what type of product it is, what kind of customers it's meant for, etc. And it was, I walked into it thinking that he was going to talk about 4th edition and the priority role, but instead he talked about spearhead, veteran customers versus newer customers. It was an interesting insight that I don't really think about very often. Maybe it was thinking about Age of Sigmar from a game store or business owner perspective. And yeah, it was an enlightening conversation to listen to.
Yeah, I found it. I watched it as well. I thought it was interesting because he said that he didn't think Skaven had been very successful, but I don't know. That wasn't my read watching it from the outside. Obviously, my read from it was very very successful, but I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I'd love to see a survey of like stores and stuff as to how it performed, but seems like it did very well. Anyways, yeah, good pick. It's an interesting breakdown. My pick of the week is going to be for our good friend Scott, the Miniature Maniac, who put together a video that I had recorded with him when I was there some time back, and it's a lot of fun. Basically, Scott and I did a 90-minute speed paint challenge as to who could paint the vampire lady from. He had 2 copies of the vampire lady from Underworlds. That like 4 vampire warband. The lady
Crimson
with the 2
Court.
swords. Sure,
Yeah,
why
Crimson
not?
Court, yeah.
I believe you. You don't seem like a liar. And
Mhm.
so we each had one of
Eventually, I'll
those.
paint those.
They were primed black, and it was a 90-minute speed paint as to who could win. And I'm just saying, I crushed him. Okay, no, you can go watch the video and decide for yourself
Yeah.
who won that. But yeah, so there you go. Check it out. Also, by the way, everybody, I enabled super chat on here now, so if you want to do that, you can do that. But you don't have to do that. It's just a thing. I'm trying to decide what are these other YouTube features I want to turn on. I haven't turned on memberships yet. People can tell me whether or not that's a thing they would care about. I don't know. But anyways, I turned on the super chat thing, so you can do it. At any rate, Miniac, it was a really fun time. It was great because we just sat there and talked and painted for like 90 minutes, and you get like a 20-minute video. There's some great conversations. There's some really fun moments. It was just legitimately a ton of fun, and I had so much fun hanging out with Scott there for like 3 days. I'm gonna make it a yearly thing as part of the game release to go and visit the boys up in Minnesota, and stuff like that. So it's a little button you hit down there, Tom, that you can donate money and chat, and it highlights your thing. How are you watching this show? How do you are you on YouTube? What are you doing? See, that's what it is. Well, thank you, Andre. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. That's very nice. That.
Did Tom just give you a super chat?
No, that was Andre who did it. Andre Oliveira. Thank you,
Okay.
Andre. You're a hero. All right. Anyways,
I'm lying. You would also be a hero if you gave in to super chat.
so it's just us talking. Yeah, it's Miniac and I talking crap
Mhm.
about each other, and then having a grand old time painting a really, really good figure. So, at any rate, check it out. It's linked down below. Do go give it a watch, give it a like. Obviously, Scott's awesome, and it was a lot of fun. So, there you go. It was. Oh, the funny part. I won't spoil the ending, but the ending of it, Marty, if you haven't watched it yet, is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. Okay, I yeah, I mean it is a twist ending on the level of any M Night Shyamalan movie you've ever seen. Okay, so there you go. Okay, I give my time way more valuable. Yeah, that is true, Tom. That is true. You're worth at least a couple dollars an hour, at least. At any rate, the that's pick of the week. Marty, let's talk some hobby time. Uh, you're obviously hobbying right now. What are you working on?
Yes, I am. I am wrapping up the only unfinished project I have for Nova. It turned out to be much more extravagant and involved than I had anticipated. I am, of course, talking about working on some 40K for the Grand Narrative at the Nova Open, some Adeptus Custodes. The thing about gaming armies is that they have to be 100% done. Unlike display figures, where if I don't finish a piece, oh no, I can just save it for next time.
Right.
And so I'm working on some Custodian Guard right now. They are about 5 days overdue for my regular schedule. But that's okay. We're going to get everything done. Everything's going to be ready in time for the convention. And I have a few surprises, as I shared with you privately, that I can't wait to share with everyone. Some stuff maybe zooming out from the hobby a little bit as a whole, a little bit professional upgrade stuff. And yeah, I'm just mainly painting some not so gold boys.
Very nice. Yeah, some blue gold boys. All right, for myself, I am working on. I finished up the Warp Blaster, and I'm working on this little guy, the engineer. He's my next thing. He's just early doors, but I like him. There's a couple. The only thing I don't like is the annoying way he's got his little hand to his head, and it's actually really hard to kind of get in there and paint a few elements. But I like him nonetheless. He's a cool model. And the reason I'm not as far along on that guy as I want to be is because I had to paint these stupid things.
Yes.
Okay. Because apparently I have to paint these stupid things now.
Yes, so do I, because those are the Aetherwrought machineries and the spells, correct?
It is indeed. It is indeed the Aetherwrought machineries, the quick silver swords, the chronomatic cogs, and this dumb thing that doesn't actually work right now.
I made a joke as we were all digesting the rules for the new edition that they're finally making us paint all of the spells that were in that one box we all bought in 2018.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's finally getting finished.
I've assembled all these swords together with bubblegum, as you can see. So
Hmm.
I'm ready to go. Very on theme. So yeah, no, it's fine. They're manifestations. We'll talk about them. They will come up
Yeah.
during the good, the bad, and so on here in a moment. But yes, manifestations. I had to get those ready. The rest of my army was ready to go, but that wasn't. So I had to get those ready this last week. So and they're now done. I've only ever taken one endless spell before this to a tournament,
Oh wow.
and that was the Purple Sun. I took Purple Sun in a Stormcast army at one point in time. So there you go.
You have an aversion to endless spells like I do to faction scenery.
I hate faction terrain. I really do. Sadly, I have to bring it this
Right.
week, but there we go.
Yeah.
I do hate endless spells, Anthony, and I do wish they were removed from the game. I know some people like them, and so that would be my only reticence at that. Is the fact that I would make other people angry, but God, I don't like them. If I had the choice between faction terrain getting removed or endless spells getting removed, I'd probably remove faction terrain first, though.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, Frank, can we chat about the Golden Tendy Awards? Yeah, sure. Well, I'm expecting my Tendy to be in the mail any day now, for my inevitable victory there. That was the prize in the speed painting challenge. Um, Assistant ref said, "Let's compromise and remove both." You know what, assistant ref, you're right. You're right. That's the only fair thing to do. Um, all right. With that, everybody. Okay. Let's see. Let's move on to the good and the bad. Well, you know what, Zanbin? Rather than answer that question, let's just get into the good and bad, and I have a feeling we'll get some revelatory answers there. So, let's talk about the good, the meh, and the ugly of AOS 4.0. I want to start with a little overview here. So, here's my quick overhaul or overview, whatever we're doing here. Okay, quick overview. AOS 4.0 is a big overhaul from the previous editions. The core of the game is the same, but it plays completely differently, especially at a high skill level. It's a completely different game of Warhammer. The interaction has increased dramatically. The game is a lot of fun in the current incarnation. It does play cleanly, but not faster. There was a lot of discussion about it being faster. That is incorrect. It is most certainly not. If anything, it is longer or slower. The only thing that might change is sometimes you get a blowout so fast that the game ends up over at the bottom of 2. So in that case, it's faster. I celebrated a milestone, as I mentioned. I did basically an RTT in a night this last weekend, Marty.
Yes. Yes, I remember. I was wilded out by that.
Yes.
Hmm.
How long did it take? It was 7 hours, 3 games, back to back to back.
Yeah.
About 10 minutes in between
Hmm.
each game. And so I hit a milestone of having played 25 games of the new edition by my count. And yeah, I think there's some good and some bad. Now my first actual tournament is this weekend. Where are you living, Marty? You've been to a tournament. You've played in a tournament already. Where are
Yes,
you
I've
living
played
now at a
in
high
one.
level?
Uh, that is flattering to imagine it so. I've played in one GT, which
Mm-hmm.
was lucky enough to be at Warhammer World, and then I played in one RTT or one day event in Brooklyn, New York, the heartland of America.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yes. And it was some interesting games. Oddly enough, I have played against Slanesh twice. So
Did you ever get more than
yeah,
one dice?
no, no.
Yeah. Dumbest ability. Okay.
Mhm.
And what was your
Yeah.
experience? Take it easy, man, Zach. Have a good one, buddy. What was your experience?
My experience overall is I liked it a lot more than third edition.
Yeah.
I think there's a minority opinion, at least held by a few among us in the extended community that did not like third edition. Maybe it was a little too much noise. Um, uh, for any number of reasons, it did feel like it was more codified, um, more streamlined. If it may not be simple, it is streamlined and therefore easier to digest.
I agree with
And
that.
when there's a rule conflict, things are all like very. There has been a lot of care put into cementing interactions and timings, at least most of the time. Like,
I
of
agree.
course, yeah, we're gonna find things where it's like, well, what does this mean? And it's like, well, if they did like 85, 90% across 25 indexes and core rules, so um, and playing with
Yeah, we're not
Slaves
going
to
to talk.
Darkness,
We're not going to touch on Phantasmagoria and how that works. I'm going to use it
yeah,
this weekend and be like, I cast this spell. What's it do? Boy, do I not know. All right, here I'm going to read it to you, and we're going to figure it
yeah,
out together.
yeah. I had played Slaves to Darkness for most events last year, and so playing Slaves to Darkness now, in some ways, it did feel similar. Like I could feel those little like tethers of similarity from third edition in terms of stats,
You
math,
play good
etc.
Iron Jaws now. Yeah, right.
Yes,
Slaves to Darkness.
yes, I do. That's kind of what I wanted, and I kind of got it. And then there were all of these interesting interactions where it's like, oh, I can cast a spell on my opponent's turn. I can put a unit in a position where it's like, well, I could just charge 6 Varangard at you in your turn.
Mm-hmm.
I have the command points for it. What are you going to do about it? I could not charge. Maybe I could. And that sort of mind game changes everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that like the interactivity is it's really high, and I have had more fun with this a lot. Like I mean, I've played a lot of games in a short amount of time and been and looked
Mm-hmm.
forward to it. Even understanding that, like, by the way, I lost all 3 games I played this weekend. I just want to be clear. Okay, like back to
Mm-hmm.
back to back losses. But I still had a really good time, and it's really interesting. And part of it is, of course, unlocking new things. But I really do like. I like the way the game plays. I agree with you; it's a lot cleaner for the most part. I agree with you that the interactivity's up. That there's a lot of interesting moves you can do. You see, you really do want to stay engaged throughout the entire thing. You're not just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say it is the most skill responsive edition ever by far. By far. Like a high skilled player can basically take any army and build a low skill and beat a low skill player. Period. Like that was always pretty much true, but now that gap is shortening, right?
Yeah.
And so like it becomes easier and easier for them to accomplish that. Less RNG is going to get in the way. All right, enough of this overview nonsense. Let's get into some specifics, shall we? We're going to start, Marty. I've actually broken up these categories a little unusually. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with the great exclamation point, excitement, energy. This is the good one. This is like the great stuff. I do think there's a lot of great things about AOS 4.0. So this is in my mind is the stuff that's great. Alan says, Vince, you had a real opportunity to make this Age of Sigmar best of the worst. I don't want anybody in Milwaukee coming after me. I respect those guys way too much.
We might even see them at Adepticon. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just wandering around. Hey, do you guys live around here? Where's that warehouse you film at? That'd be amazing. At any rate, there was a rumor, by the way, that that Goobs was the person that Rich Evans told a story about that he went to a minor league baseball game with and was the one who showed him his Warhammer. Because Rich Evans tells that story in an episode. But he was not.
Yeah.
Goobs confirmed he was not that guy. He was just, he happened to be in, Goobs was in one of their movies.
Yeah.
At any rate. Okay.
The
Here's
Red
my
Letter
great
Media
stuff.
and Warhammer crossover will have to wait another day.
One day, absolutely. I want to go. I'll go on the show. Open invite, guys. Like if you want me on, I'm here. I love old bad movies and have a lot of fun things to say about them. All right. Usage of abilities is clean, fast, and clear. 95% of the time. I made the joke about Phantasmagoria. That's a good example. I would say the other thing that will sometimes cause issues is sometimes they out clevered themselves. Okay.
Mhm.
So it'll be like, you can't do this thing unless if you used a run ability. And it's like, well, don't forget redeploy has a run keyword ability, right? So it's like, it is clear, the rule is there, right? But
Yeah.
you have to really understand and keep in your mind the base abilities and all the keywords and understand what's referencing what. So the rules are clear, but sometimes it can be easy to get lost in the minutia. Yeah. Um, but the timing of the abilities is wonderful. I do my abilities, then you do yours. Reactions use the stack. It's very simple, right? I do a thing, I do my reactions, you do your reactions, life moves on. So, all in all, I like the way abilities work. I think they are really clean and effective. Marty, have you gotten into the habit of saying something like some version of the following? I have completed my movement phase abilities. Like when you're the active player. I have completed my movement
Uh,
phase ability. Over to you. Do you have any movement phase abilities you would like to do?
yeah, I have certainly gotten into the habit of asking my opponent specifically, can you please let me know when you're done your hero phase or done your movement phase, etc. So I usually have a plan about what I'm going to do as the
Sure.
non-active player. And I just want to make sure that my opponent is fully done their stuff because previously we would just go, all right, I'm done my movement phase. I'm now just going to go into shooting. I'm not going to declare anything. And
Right.
I don't want to get to a point where it's like, well, if you're going to start to shoot, I'm going to do this. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
just need to space
I have
things out a
just
little
gotten
bit
into
more.
the habit of I have completed my charge phase abilities. Do you have any charge phase abilities you'd like to use? Right, and then
Yeah.
back and forth and back and forth. At any
Hmm.
rate, for the most part, abilities clean, good. Yeah, I mean, like as Josh says, the names of the abilities don't matter. It gets confusing when abilities have the same name as their keywords. Yeah, or like something is referenced and it's weird and so on and so forth. Right. So yeah, or like you can redeploy and shoot, but you can't redeploy and countercharge because the way that they're using different because the way they're accessing their abilities or whatnot. So, um, okay. Uh, here's a simple one. This is a very simple one. Damage on unit instead of the models. It's just great, right? You just track a
Oh
little
yeah.
die next to it. Just pull the model you want. Just pull the model you want.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, like, I don't have much more to say about it. It's just a very, very good quality of life change. It's a small thing, but it matters, and it made life better. So, good. Okay. And then great battle plans. Marty, have you played through all of the battle plans at this point?
Certainly not. And I didn't know when I was looking at the like your question when you asked me to be on the show tonight. I tried to avoid looking at the General's Handbook because the General's Handbook will change every year. But it's great that we at least started fourth edition with our greatest hits. Like most of these scenarios, if not um, overwhelming majority of them, are our favorites and the best ones to play from previous years,
Yep.
and they've made sure they've had the season tactics in mind for the territories. And so it's like makes you think it's not just, oh, we're playing with the standard 11 by 60 across the thing. It's like, no, you're here, so you have to think about your battle tactics a little more, etc. I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
really appreciate the battle plans I've played so far.
Agreed. Yeah, I've played through all of them
Yeah.
at this point, and honestly, I other than there is one issue that runs across like 5 or 6 battle plans. We'll talk about in a moment when we get to the bad things. But for the most part, like the battle plans and the battle plan constructions, the way they're scored, I've used the terrain maps. I know like that'll often not be the case at tournaments, right? Like when we go to NashCon, they're
Mhm.
not going to use the terrain maps, right? The tables are set up how they're set up because it is
Yeah.
what it is, right? You got 100
Yeah.
tables, you can't be walking around changing those every game. That's insanity.
Mhm.
But I
Yes, and
appreciate the
and
terrain
all
maps and stuff like that. They work well.
yeah. And also, I was specifically saying as a critique of the terrain maps. Often, when I volunteer for frontline gaming, there is not a guarantee of the amount of terrain I will get, nor how it's distributed against across all of the containers. So I will do my best for universal layout with the terrain I have, because famously one year, just due to logistics accidents, I ended up with about a third of the tables having Star Wars terrain at launch, and we had to
Sure.
scramble around to get stuff. So it's like we do our best.
Yep, that's always the case. And I don't hold it against any TO. No one can expect TOs to use the terrain maps, but I like that they included them. It's good.
Yeah.
Battle plans are fun. Like 10 and a half of them I could play at the drop of a hat and be perfectly happy with. It's pretty good. There's really only one of them I actually don't like. So that's not bad. Counterplay. You're always involved in the game. We talked about it a lot already in the overview, but it's really true. Like there's almost always a line. I'm trying to find a line. What's the line, that's going to get me there? Do I redeploy now? Do I redeploy later? Do I do, or do I not? Sorry, do I save the CP for later? Do I have this counter charge opening? Is counter shoot the right thing now? Should I be unleashing prayer spell or whatever? Right? Like there's a lot of stuff you're doing off turn, and a lot of it matters a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you need to be dialed in.
If I may add to that, it actually breaks a stereotype that I think Warhammer has had for years and years, where you spend 15 to 20 minutes just watching your opponent move their toys.
Right.
And that can lead to just Warhammer, especially as like a spectator, is being boring. And I think especially for the new edition, if we continue that trend going forward, like even after 4th edition, that will no longer be the case. And it will be, you have to be, even just watching it, be a little bit more engaged. It's a little bit more exciting. And it's always good to see something interesting like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put this fine a point on it. You win the game off turn now. Right? Yeah. Like, that's the real talk. Like, whether or not you win the game is largely based on the actions you take, not on your turn. I mean, you got to do smart things on your turn, but you have all the control there, right? The proper use of your abilities off turn and stealing their battle tactic when you can, disrupting it or moving on to objectives. Suddenly they don't control it. Like there's just things that you do off turn that are really, really, really impactful, right? They call a battle tactic and you redeploy a unit over, and then after they moved, and then that's their closest unit, and you shoot it and whittle it down to where it can't kill your unit anymore and complete the battle tactic or whatever, right? Like whatever, pick your thing. Yeah. And yes, it is. Josh said counterplay is huge in this edition. I'm so happy about it. It's a Johnny's dream world. We're constantly thinking about the possibilities. So it's a very specific type of Johnny, Josh, to be clear, which is the in-game possibility. Johnny really loves this. One of my fears, I think there is a dark side to this, by the way. Okay. Like, I think this is mostly great, but I will say this has been a problem for me, Marty. I know I've talked about this a little with you before. Yeah. Like, they have given us so many options. I now suffer from full-on analysis paralysis when playing this game. The paradox of choice has me reeling, because I'm like, there have been games where I have taken almost 10 minutes to choose a battle tactic, and I really don't want to do that. Like in a tournament, I can't do that. I can't be that guy, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm like practicing at home, and I'm just like, because I have to think through every possibility. Well, if I call this and do this, then what are they going to do? Well, if he can redeploy, he has how many CP left? Okay, so he can both redeploy. He could countercharge this unit over here. He can do this. I'm trying to like think through every possibility, right, of what's going to stop me. Okay, nope, that one has a. I can't pick that one because if I do this and this, then he'll have a counterplay, and then I don't have that line. Okay, what if I choose this one? Well, nope, he can counterplay that one. Okay, I can't choose that one, and so on and so forth, right?
Now I have a question there. This may be a longer discussion. Do you find that you have that analysis paralysis equally across each faction you're playing? Are you running into an issue where certain armies have more reliable access to achieving battle tactics than others? Like you like Slanesh, for example.
Sure. Like is a strong word, but I'm playing it, yes.
Yes. So, like there was a discussion on the show a few weeks ago across all of the reviews of the 4th edition indexes, that certain armies have access to units which can reliably get or three battle tactics without interference from counterplay. Is the inclusion of those units helping you pick those battle tactics, or their absence forcing an increase in that analysis paralysis?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, I like that question a lot, Marty. I think that's really good. That's insightful. I do think there's differences in the armies. So
Mhm.
some armies need to play, especially the way I play Slanesh, which I don't. To be clear,
Mhm.
I don't use shooting units, right? Like I'm not just
Right.
spamming bliss barbs out there or whatever. Okay, because I hate shooting in a Slanesh army. I think it's dumb. I think it's dumb that they've. It's a real shame they've built the army into something I no longer want to play. But that's largely what's
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah.
Um, I got into Slanesh mainly for like the cool demons. I thought it was like the coolest demons. And like original Juan Diaz metal daemonettes and then the plastic one shortly after, like 2004 to 2006 is when I collected my initial, Slanesh army, right?
Hmm.
And um the reality is it's but it is always a finesse army, and if you're a finesse army, you can't make a wrong choice. Um
Yeah.
if like if I'm playing Suns, I've played Suns twice, and let me tell you what, you are too blessed to be stressed, okay? Because it's you don't have to worry about any of this crap. What are you going to counterplay me? What are you going to take an objective from me? No, you're not. No,
Hmm.
you're not. Right? Like other than getting tripped up on a battle tactic here or there if you're not careful, it's just push forward and DPS check army, the army,
Yeah.
right? Um,
I equated running 12 Varangard a little bit to training wheels for the mechanics of the new
right,
edition. Yeah.
right. So it is tricky. It's been something that I found that it means that, and I think you're onto the right point there. Is that like there's just certain armies that I probably shouldn't play in this edition. And I think Slanesh is probably one of them. I'm taking it to this tournament because I want to. But like long term, I would never play Slanesh for a whole season. It's like indigestion inducing, right? Like I have
Yeah.
agita over it. Um, and there's because every choice matters so much, and Josh, I don't know if I agree with that because the higher up skill the skill ladder you play, the more your opponent is also going to be able to play at that level, and the more you have to deeply think about every choice because they're not. If you make one, when you play Magic at like a super high level, like at a LSV level, okay, like somebody like that, top Pro Tour level, there's like this small cadre of players who can play Magic like this. You like draw your hand, you play one card, they can probably guess 5 out of the 6 cards left in your hand based on what deck you're playing, based on what your one play was, or your one land you dropped was, right? Like, and everything you play, they know probably what's in your hand. They know what your next play is going to be. They know if they play this, then you'll do this, and so on. That's what it takes to play at like ultra high level MTG. You have to be able to know every card your opponent has, could have, will have, and how they'll respond at every point, right? Because if you
Yeah.
make one misstep, you're done. You lose. It's that easy, right? It is a tightrope. And so, as the skill now, for most players, that's not where they're going to operate, and they'll be fine. They'll just make mistakes left and right, and their opponents will fail to capitalize on it, right? But very much this is the case where, like, the higher up the skill ladder you go, the more one misstep you'll fall right off. It becomes a razor's edge. So there you go. Mr. Morton, hey, thanks for the super chat, buddy. Appreciate it. What are the pros and cons of S2D new to AOS? The Marty, I'm gonna let you talk about this as well because you took S2D to the tournament. My answer is
Good.
for S2D is it's an extremely wide range of selections. I think there are multiple paths to victories. You can do the
Yeah.
kind of Iron Wall. You can play a lot of Varangard. Archeon, Be'lakor, and Abraxia are all very powerful hero leaders that you can use and then slot in with a lot of other choices with like Chaos Knights or Warriors as an anvil and so on. Varangard are very,
Yeah.
very strong right now, though that probably won't last forever. And I think like Marauder, the Marauder takeover, like the Barbarian assault is actually a really, really powerful army that hasn't really been explored because everybody's been looking at Vanguard. But I think that like that's all there. What do you think?
Yeah. So I would say the pros are it plays in a way that removes a lot of that analysis paralysis, like we were just talking about. Some of the units are so reliable, so consistent, so durable, and fast. Like you need a lot of mobile hammer units in an army, and slaves can provide that. And so some of the battle tactics might be easier for you to digest as you're processing what to do in your opponent's turn, at the beginning of your turn, etc. Having access to something like Furies, which are just like a move 12 unit, can get out of combat on a 3-up. Uh, and so it's like, in some ways, as a new player, it's good training wheels. They can take you through pickup games relatively easily, and you're learning the game at a good pace. It's not really too much to really wrap your head around. That
Agreed.
being said, yeah. Now, just as a quick con, there are a lot of characters in the
Sure.
army which do not provide a lot of value,
Yeah.
and you might buy a bunch of them when you start a collection, and then find yourself not using them because they
Yeah.
aren't
There's.
providing you a
I
good
want you to
win path.
save that thought. We're going to talk about that in a
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Oh yes, I know we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple
Yeah.
other quick things here. G Well, thanks for the super chat, much appreciated. He said, "So would you say the current level of constant turn interaction is the highest it should be before overburdening a player's decision making starts?" Yes, yes, I think we are at the
Yeah.
limit, 100%. I don't know that we're bad. I'm just saying it's there, and certain people will react differently to that. Just a couple other quick ones. Jose said, on that note, Vince, which army would be closer to a control player? Oh gosh, I don't know, the blue deck, Lumineth probably, Lumineth with Teclis maybe potentially.
Pro boy.
Cruel Boys maybe it's a little random. That's the problem. Control players
Yeah.
don't roll dice.
Oh yeah.
Control players control, but definitely like LRL plays in that space for sure. Okay. Slow to buy. Do you think the macro scale decisions in games at very high levels would cause more or less of these decisions? Do you think the macro? I'm not sure what you mean, Slow Buy. You'll have to give me a little more on that. Agree, Abraxia is amazing, and yeah, like the S2D is just a really good army. Okay, let's get back to the list here. All right. Willard says, I wonder how much the analysis paralysis affects casual players in their games. Probably not as much because you don't realize it, right? You just don't realize the options you're not taking. Okay. I do like that. Cruel Boys is more like Demir. That's fun. Oh, Zinch, Tomb King. Yeah, 100%. Zinch would be a great control army example. Thank you, Tomb King Tristan. Yes, Zinch is a good control force. Okay. Skill matters more than ever. We talked about this. Making the right choices in the game can bring victory with most any army. I really do think this is the case. You know, like you can play almost anything, and if you're a high skill player using the tools you have at your disposal, the win rates are just noise in the background right now. It's just it's completely irrelevant, unless you're playing someone who's at the same sort of ELO or skill level or whatever you want to call it, and they have a better base tool set to work from. Right? That's the only time it starts mattering, right? Yeah. Let's see. The my next one here. Stealth Monkey said, new player considering systems. What kind of player is going to love AOS 4 versus 40k 10? Boy, I don't know.
That's a topic for its own show.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know, man. I mean, like, I would defend that I think the AOS world and models are cooler, but that's certainly your mileage may vary and personal aesthetic choice thing, so that I can't rely on. I suppose somebody who isn't going to be too obsessed over the details, like, there's less fiddly nonsense in AOS. By that I mean, like, I'm not worried about like who's carrying the plasma rifle and who's carrying the grenade or whatever. It's just like you take your unit, you play with your toys. It's really about like what you're doing on the table versus what you're doing in list building and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. There you go. Slowby said, like movement and choosing to avoid situations where you know that those decisions would come up. A higher level player would see those situations before they would happen and be able to avoid them using movement or other choices. Yeah, potentially. Yes, like I think that there's it's throughout every part of their decision, right? Yeah. So I don't know. Let's talk about some more greats, Marty. Here we go. New
Hmm.
weapon abilities. I like them. They're nice. They're simple. I mean, companion is a little wonky. I'm not sure I love that.
Yeah.
But other than that, like anti whatever, rend +1 or whatever, and charge +1 damage, and crit auto wound and stuff like that. That's all great. It's all
Yeah, they
great.
used to be like a paragraph or like a block on the war scroll. Now it's just like 3 or 4 words of text, and yeah.
And they're very
Um,
obvious, very unified, simple. This was the right way to do keywording. I've always been anti keywording if there's like, and I've always said the reason is because every time that designers do it, they can't stop themselves from writing like 60 or 70 keywords. And then it's not keywords anymore. It's just like you're just hiding rules. But full credit to the AOS team. They did it. They wrote 11 and then stopped. Good for them. It's a success. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Are you still there? You thinking? Okay.
yes, yeah,
You
yeah.
were just
I'm
thinking.
plugging in the thing. There we go.
There you go. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
We're plugged in. We're powered up. We're ready to go. Okay. Uh, yes. Like I understand. Companion's the one that kind of bothers me. All of these have some things like companion is the no fun allowed keyword. You're not allowed to have
Yeah.
fun. So there you go. Oh, Mr. Morton, that's ridiculous. Thank you so much for that super chat there, buddy. He said, by the way, I can't stress this enough. I've been afraid to buy and use an airbrush until I saw your airbrush video. I started painting in January and hit a wall with edge highlighting. Felt like giving up until I found you. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. That's wonderful to hear, and I'm glad it helps, man. That is literally the reason I do this every week, is because I want to make sure people can that if people have questions that they get the help they need. My goal, as I've said for a long time, is to make the sort of like Library of Alexandria of things. So you can just come to YouTube, type in a technique or a thing you have a question on, and find one of my videos that has an answer for it. I just want to answer people's questions and make sure they never run into that problem, and can always paint what they want. Marty, what do you think about prayers in here? How you liking the prayer system so far? You happy with it?
Well, as a high elf player, no, I think it's an interesting mechanic, and similarly, like rally has been changed as well, where
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like you're interacting with a pool of dice for each interaction, and I would only say that like this would have been a good opportunity to just make a universal prayer, like in the core rules, instead of deferring to a universal prayer that is in each index. But otherwise, I think it is quite. Uh, uh, Fluid. I think it's interacting with the game almost in a more like narratively cohesive sense. Like this is something that feels like we're praying to gods and you're building up faith over time. It's not just like a magic spell with like another output sort of thing.
Yeah. When I first read prayers, I was honestly kind of reticent about it. I was a little concerned. I thought maybe we were going to be like, I don't know, that it wasn't going to work, that it was going to be a little silly, that it felt overly complicated. After playing with prayers a bunch in armies with priests, I have to say I love the system. Yeah, you sometimes roll a one and, like lose your points or whatever. Like it happens. But on the whole, it feels like good magic. I don't know what to say. Like I
Mhm.
would take a priest over a wizard every time. Okay.
Yeah.
It's you can like praying off turn feels fine because even if you fail, you still get the points. You feel like you're building up towards something. So even if it's like, oh, I didn't get the number, you don't feel like you wasted the priest's effort. Like, okay, cool, but I get I get some points. I get to use those in the future, right? Like it just feels good. Like you're investing in the future. Worst case, like, hey, that's nice. I guess worst case is you roll a one and nothing happens. But like, sort of bad case, I'll say. Um, you can always give a shot at it, and if you get it, great, and if you don't, that's okay too. It's like, yeah, well, I'll get it next time, right? I just really like the way the prayers work. I think they're generally good. Obviously, there's some disparity between the armies, but on the whole, very positive.
Yeah. And they should have maybe clarified a little bit better in the core rules that Mystic Shield and Resurrection are not like core book ability.
So funny. I
Yeah.
obviously, I had the core rules somewhat early, and when that was like making the rounds, everybody's like, "This is new Mystic Shield." No, like this is garbage. It's so much worse. And I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, you don't even know. There is no such thing as Mystic Shield. You need to get rid of that out of your head."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it really is catharsis. I agree. Like, it's a strict upgrade over Magic. All right, my final great. But Marty, I'll be curious if you have any other greats. 3-inch combat range. Just simple, easy, effective. 3-inch combat range. It's great. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. No more fiddly measuring. You just take that little 3-inch stick we always use, you sweep it over the area and go, yep, they all attack. Cool. Next. Like, it's very simple. I mean, right? I don't think there's much more to say about it except thumbs up.
Yeah. I would say just as the combat range thing, I'm a little hesitant. I mean, like 3-inch combat range is making it easy for everyone to know who's in combat. Yes, that is very smooth. I think I'm focusing maybe a little bit more on how you get into combat, and oops, all of a sudden I'm in combat and didn't expect to be, sort of thing.
Sure.
But yeah, no, it's quite simple. You don't have to worry about like as I remember once upon a time, like while Age of Sigmar was developing and becoming more popular in 40K, it's like, well, you measure from the unit that is within half an inch, and then every model that is also. It was like Galatian Veterans.
Sure.
I much prefer this to Galatian Veterans. Is the best way to put that point.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like my only, we'll talk about it. Like, it's very, very strong on what it did was provide a fundamental huge buff to hordes and 10-man cavalry, right? That's what it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now you were running 6 blocks of Varangard, right? Like 2 6 blocks of Varangard, yes?
Yes, 2 6 blocks, yes.
Yes. The perfect unit. I will say the difference between running 10 cav when you have to manage their coherency, and like, this is not on my list, but it should be, of like the way you have to check coherency after every casualty, because it's like if you pull this guy and then something's immediately you have to check, and so if it's not in coherency, you've got to pull until it's coherent, and then do it again, 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 and then do it again.
I have a personal benchmark for when a rule might be a problem, and it is if it reaches a threshold of being argued in the Warhammer Weekly hive mind for more than 48 hours, it's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And I hate that. But anyway, that aside, it certainly buffed 10-man cavalry units and big hordes, right? And my problem is we didn't really buff monsters. We'll talk about them in a minute. Like, but it fundamentally made certain units quite strong. And it's like we didn't take the steps to go, okay, but what are we doing to balance the other side of the equation? So I like it. I like what it does to the game. It's wonderful that now, like, units all basically get to fight. But boy, is there some dark side to that as well. So there you go. Okay. Next up, my next category, Marty. Yeah. You ready? This is the meh category. The
no, may I before we
close
out?
Yeah. Any greats from you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. And I made sure to poll some people in my local and regional communities because I wanted to know what other people were thinking. And several times it came up that Spearhead was just like, as a format, had near universal appraise.
Which I totally agree with. I'm sticking to the main game here for this evaluation. But
that's what I think, just as like a little asterisk.
Totally agreed. Spearhead is incredible.
Yeah. I hope with each yearly season, we also get maybe an update for Spearhead as a gesture that they are looking at the format with at least some notion to longevity. That's all I can hope for. Because right now it seems great. And I just don't want it to be abandoned.
Very nice.
Yeah. Anyway, that was it.
Nope. That's a great addition. Thank you. All right. So my next category is meh. Like, it's fine. It's not anything amazing. Just like table stakes. I'm not writing anybody a letter of praise about this one, right? It's just like, yeah, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. It's a thing we probably should have always had. Now we have it. Good. Right? There you go. All right, here's my fine list. You ready?
Yes.
Keywords for units. Infantry, cavalry, like we already had monster and artillery to some degree, but now it's like war machine and stuff like that,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
just clear, defined, role-based keywords. Good.
Yes.
Always should have had it all the way down the line. How we only had like hero and monster and basically nothing else. It's a complete mystery. And like watching them have to dance around it for multiple editions of like, uh, uh, a unit that's doesn't have a mount or a companion and
Yeah,
is
Galatian
less than
veteran.
this many wounds. It's like, okay, guys, got it.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we've just got those words. Again, it's nothing like huge, but it's nice. It makes the game easy and smooth.
Yeah. No, it's I think not enough things interact with those keywords yet. Or maybe they only interact with the game as much as they need to, like for the
Yeah.
anti +1 Ren stuff.
Yep.
But like if cavalry is a problem, but cavalry itself doesn't really have any rules attached. Does that make it's more like their role within the game is very strong.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Next up, my next one. Redefined roles for units. Just generally like giving things roles. Again, something that should have always been there and kind of always was there to some degree. Sometimes it was subtext rather than text, right? But it's like this unit clearly wants to go charge and be a mobile hammer. This unit wants to stand still and be an anvil and be a porcupine or whatever, right? Like things have some kind of role they're trying to play within an army. It's good.
Now, I think that's a double-edged sword
Uh-huh.
because
A lot of things in this
there,
category are.
yeah, um, there is something to be said, and I think we've talked about this at length as the faction-focused articles were coming out. And I used the example of squigs because squigs were noticeably changed in ways compared to how they were in third edition. Like
Sure.
they lost their a trick rule, they lost a wound. Certain ways in which they express themselves on the tabletop through their rules and stats have been diminished,
Yep.
and that's being that happened effectively across the board to many armies. And so while the rules are more streamlined, they're easier to balance and tinker from a development perspective,
Right.
but at the cost to, I think, a lot of narrative verisimilitude, to be maybe a little wordy about it. But I can't think of a better way to express that. And that we used to have, for people who are decade plus veterans of the Warhammer hobby, know that these things used to have character sheets, basically. Like look at an old world unit card, for example. As a row of stats and then a sea of upgrades, etc. But now it's like it's about not what can it's not what the squigs do, but what you can do with the squigs,
Yeah,
and
sure.
that turns into its unit role. So it's like, what price are we paying to make sure that stuff has a defined role?
Yeah, okay. That's fair. I like that. I like that. I would say the downside to this as well. A lot of these are going to be two-edged swords, right? And so the sort of darker side to this one, I think,
Mhm.
for my money, is the the they didn't go really as far as they should have, and some things ended up with goofy rolls. Like, for example, Storm Vermin are clearly meant to be sort of an anvil unit in the Skaven army, right? They have anti-charge, +1 rend, and so on. But they suck at that job. Like, they're just not actually very good at it, right?
Mhm.
Compared to, say, Ard Boys or something, right? Or Chaos Warriors. So, like, they oftentimes would just slap a roll on something, and it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Like to both whether it's, as you said, the sort of verisimilitude of that unit or just the actual abilities they gave them. Like they tried to give them a role but then didn't go far enough. And I just
Yeah.
feel like they could have actually better defined some of those units. Really, when they put it together, really ask themselves, have we given this unit the tools it needs to do the role we've assigned it? Right? Because the reality is, you look at something like Skaven, I would never take Storm Vermin ever right now. Like, they're just an absolute
Right.
waste. They're not going to do enough damage. As far as an anvil goes, I'd rather just throw 40 more clan rats in the way, because 40 health is just going to be a better sort of damage sink than whatever I'm getting out of half the number of storm vermin, right?
Yeah.
So it's not for basically the same points, right? It's just not a question. Okay. So yeah, agreed completely, Marty. Agreed completely. Uh, here's my next one. Magic and spells falls in the it's fine category. It's fine. It's fine. What I mean, how do you feel about magic in AOS 4?
Yeah. Uh, I was thinking about the Andorian locust sort of thing that we dealt with for the past year,
Sure.
because part of me always expects that they're testing for something they're going to include later. And we have a little bit of those defined unit types. Like they tested how to make infantry work, how to make the Galatian champions, like how to hide heroes from being sniped too easily. We ended up with that. And I was thinking, all right, are we getting something like a hybrid version of what we miss, kind of sort of from 8th edition fantasy, with like this dice pool and adding dice like a lottery to our casting bonuses? We didn't really get that. I think we kept kind of the nuts and bolts of the classic Age of Sigmar magic system for spells. Um, I think they were very careful about what spells do now, especially since running and charging is too good. So we made sure that a lot of buffs were avoiding certain design spaces. Uh, Feels okay. Again, as a Lumineth player and as a Varangard and Bellicor enjoyer, I have not really had too much experience with priests, but they seem like that's an interesting system.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I kind of hate magic because it feels like a complete waste of time about half the time. Like plenty of spells in this game cast on a 7, and
Mm-hmm.
7 is actually a pretty tough cast. You only make it, like, assuming you
Right.
have no bonus, which there's not a lot of
Yeah.
bonuses to cast going around, and you're assuming you're not in a magic dom army or something, right? And
Especially if you
so
only have one caster.
yeah, sure, absolutely, which is very likely for reasons we'll talk about in a moment. Um, and so you end up trying to roll for the 7. You fail it, let's call it 40x% of the time, 45ish% of the time, right? And it's just like, okay, and then nothing happens. And then if you get that number, you roll the 7, which is, decently likely. Then your opponent rolls and just unbinds it. And it's like, oh, okay. Cool. Like, magic is such a weird thing to rely on, and like that's why I despise the critical core buffs to an identity that ride on spells and spell lores. I love that now your wizard just knows all your wizards just know all the spells in the lore. That's great. No more like remembering who has what. That feels very good,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
it's so easy for spells to just do nothing. A lot of them are very short range, so you're not in range to use the thing you want to use. Then you finally get in range and you roll and you fail. Then you try again the next round and you roll, it gets unbound. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you're playing like
I found
Tzeentch or Seraphon or something, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm playing magic like I live in the old world. Every spell is cast. It's a totally
I
different
actually
experience.
I found myself in certain games where it's like, am I forgetting spells? And it's like, no, I only have access to 3 of them,
Yeah.
and I just cast twice, failed once. My hero phase is done.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, so it's almost like it's becoming less. It's going to become less prominent for people who are not spell dom armies. Like you could always get away with like, well, at least I have a guy to cast Mystic Shield. I have some squib who's just going to do this one thing that is of worth or of value for their points. And in some matchups, it's fine. Like I can cast it, in other ones, it doesn't matter. Now it's like you're just not going to take something like that. We keep dancing around this issue about the army list construction. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. If I may add for your list, I'm sorry, I don't know
Go
when
ahead.
you are done the med list.
You're good. No, we're still in meh right
Okay.
now. We're still in meh.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you can add one. Go ahead. What do you want? What do you want to add?
It's more like checking a box where it's like, good job, thank you for doing what was expected, and just like kind of removing save stacking. Like I
Oh,
think save
sure.
stacking is like well and truly, it's like thank you for doing
That's
this
a good
thing you
point.
should have done 6 years ago. Like
Yeah.
yay. Like this is Age of Sigmar. We wanted all of these more simplified stats so that we didn't have to worry about all of these statistics. Like how can I make the most unkillable unit? And we had that problem for years and years. And now it's like no more Mystic Shields, minimal ways to like, and now it exists in the form of, can I find debuffs? Can I find attack debuffs? If I'm Night Haunt, which debuffs do I want to use today?
Right.
Sort of thing. And that's the way that you make a unit more survivable. I think that's like, I think we're in a better world now that we don't have to worry about just making giant turtle units.
Agreed. I agree with that. Um, uh, Donna Green said, "If it's so hard to cast a spell, isn't it harder to unbind it?" Yes, of course. I mean, assuming that you're both doing it with no bonuses, right? If they have bonuses to unbind, it really tilts pretty hard, pretty fast in their favor. But keep in mind, if your spell's on a 7, you have like a 55% chance of succeeding on it. The most common number you're going to succeed on is a 7. Like that's just the statistically most likely thing you roll on 2d6, meaning they have about a 45-ish% chance to unbind you, right? So like that's not insignificant, right? So it just often makes magic feel like a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing, right? So there you go. Okay. My next, it's fine. Shooting. Shooting, just in general. I think we've finally got to a mostly good point. I mean, KO probably needs some buffs so it can actually like do something. I suppose doesn't feel like it actually has much in the way of play here. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't played it enough to get a good read on it. But it seemed from those who I know who play KO, they don't feel very great right now. But for the most part, other than maybe like some Giselle nonsense or some people trying long strike spam, which I don't think is any good and doesn't win games, it's just like shooting
Yeah.
isn't really. We got rid of that things that I have said repeatedly for years was the problem with shooting, which is long range mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Those are gone. And
Uh,
it's amazing. You get rid of long range mortal wounds in shooting, and almost instantaneously, shooting is fine.
well, I think we got here in pieces
Yeah,
because the main thing that we needed to do was also protect our utility characters.
sure.
And we got there with the Galatian champions thing, where it's like, all right, if you keep a unit near here, specifically if they're battle line, I don't remember off the top of my head if as many restrictions exist in fourth edition now. But the point being is just like if you are outside of 12 and a character is near a unit, like an infantry character, they can't be shot or something like that, which was a needed change sort of thing. You
Yeah,
have to be able to get close enough in order to be able to snipe, etc. Um, and also, it's like, but like I was hesitant to say that shooting was dead because a few of us, when we were looking over the new scrolls, it's like, well, a lot of things got an extra shot. Now Venari Sentinels have 2 shots each. Does it matter that they don't have crit mortals? Um, Sort of thing. I think time will tell on that. But yeah, I do think shooting is in a better place than it used to be in terms of it not being overly oppressive, and also changes to cover, like the idea of cover being -1 to hit instead of +1 save.
yeah,
The whole thing about like just obscuring terrain just existing as like a base state instead of you having like a 1 in 6 chance if both players agree to use the terrain rules and the pack doesn't explicitly say it, etc. Uh, so like I think yeah, I think we're in a
yeah. I
better
agree.
place.
I
I don't
think
know. Yeah,
turning off shooting in
yeah,
combat so you can actually pin the units and shut them off
yeah,
unless they have shoot in combat. You're
yeah,
right. I was being a bit facetious because you're right. Like the
yeah,
reality is we got rid of like the double shooting in the hero phase. We got rid of long range
yeah,
mortal damage. We protected the heroes, like you said, right? We Like just shooting across the board took a lot of hits, right? Yes,
Yeah.
covering fire still exists. Yes, there's still a couple units that can do good damage with shooting. Giselles, long strikes, maybe a couple things like that, right? But so like on the whole, we've gotten to a better place. And by the way, shooting still has to exist. It's an important part of the game. You should be
Yeah.
vulnerable to shooting. It is important that shooting is a presence that can damage, disrupt, and debilitate your army. That has to always be the case. This isn't a melee only game, and it adds an important third dimension. It just
Yeah.
can't be oppressive in like the obvious way to go. It has so much innate raw power, and it seems they finally sort of accepted that and built accordingly, which is good. Yeah. All right, next up on my it's fine list. It's fine. It's fine. Command points and command abilities. It's fine. They're fine.
Yeah.
Like overall, they're fine.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting economy. The fact that a lot of abilities require to be turned on, like creates this much more scarce and understood resource between players. Yeah. Not
Four
like,
command points
like,
feels like the correct number. It's almost perfect. It like the command abilities all feel pretty good. Countercharge costing 2 feels exactly right. You feel that pain. You really want to do it. The like yes, certain of them are pretty powerful. Like covering fire is strong, but it has lots of restrictions, and you're only going to do it on certain units that are really primed to be able to take advantage of it. Like it just everything feels pretty right to me. Zanman says, I really wish you got 3 per turn rather than 4 at the start of the battle round. 3 per turn. I see what you're saying. Okay, so 6 total. I don't know. I think it'd feel like too many. I get it, but I think it'd be too many.
Yeah.
For the most part. Good.
I think that the intended design is like you want more. Like, yeah, it would be nice if we had that, but if you're too comfortable with the resource, then the resource feels less precious. And I think that's the intended design of it's like you want every command point spent to be a very important decision.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think we're just about there. And I think maybe a critical point is, no pun intended, a critical point is that there's certain ways to access a 5th command point which are too strong.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. Yeah. Zaman says, in all my games, all 4 are spent in the first turn of each battle round. Homie, you gotta keep your powder dry a little longer there, buddy. I guarantee you're spending them when you don't need to be spending them if that's the case. It is a thing. Like it's the trigger discipline of AOS, right? Is like, when do you actually spend these? Like I all out attack and all out defense only if it's the bottom of the round and I know there's nothing else I'm going to be wanting to be spending points on. Like I don't need to power through. They are now the lowest priority thing I do, right? Unless like all out defensing is going to stop a battle tactic. That's it, right? That's the question I'm constantly asking is which one of these things do I spend that stops a battle tactic from happening? Period. Or keeps an objective under my control. All right. Well, like in other words, what gets me the gold? What gets me points? That's it. That's the only time I want to spend command points. So, like I usually am trying to have 1 left going in that's sort of free at the end of the round. So there you go. Okay. Objective control. Just having an OC stat, the way objective control works, like buffing control score and stuff like that. It's all fine. It's good. Doesn't matter usually a ton, but sometimes and occasionally it can matter a lot.
This is one place where, because it feels like quite standardized compared to 40K, even down to the same graphic design on the unit cards. I think OC is just better and more intuitive in 40K than it is here. The way that control score is additive instead of multiplicative or multiplicative grammar. And yeah, I'm just like, I feel like this was just a little bit of a miss, and this was a chance where copy and pasting I feel like would have worked, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, so Branu said I think OC is bad. It is basically what we had before, but as a stat instead of rule and just an excuse to hand out mostly pointless rules to pad bad war scrolls. I don't know if I totally agree with that. Like, to some degree, I think objective control can matter a lot. I've played plenty of games where it does matter, where it ends up mattering and being something a game turns on of taking control. I think that, like, They have to be really careful though, because for objective control to matter, we have to be staying in combat for some amount of time. And like if
Yeah.
people are running around with 10 blocks of Dawn Riders running in, critting on 5 ups, or Varen, packs of 6 Varen Guard smashing in, double fighting, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
We're not sticking
It,
around long enough for this to matter.
but yeah, I think it greatly diminishes abilities which have minus to OC, like Olinder's Veil,
Sure.
or just like
Yeah, it's
ignore,
like
and
minus
it's like
three to
minus
everybody
three to,
around her.
yeah, and it's like that's nothing in the additive system, but like where if she says -1 OC to like their unit's characteristic, now all of a sudden if there's a unit that's OC2, every model counts as 2, then all of a sudden they all count as 1, and that has a much more, yeah. So it's
Maybe. I don't know. Like
yeah.
I've actually lost a game because of Olinder's neg 3 to OC control. Like I've literally lost the game
Hmm.
because of that rule. So I
Yeah.
felt like it mattered plenty there. I do think ZK said I felt like it mattered a lot more in Spearhead. It does, because in Spearhead you tend to stick around and fight longer often. Depending on, like, a lot of Spearheads will actually get stuck in pretty protracted fights, and so
Yeah.
OC ends up mattering a lot. Some of these abilities, like Sinessa in the Slanesh army, has an ability to like either +5 or -5 a unit within like 18 inches.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a huge swing and a huge range on it. I've had that matter a lot, right? So, there's just like some of them can be written so small and weirdly that they don't matter. But like, is anyone going to argue that Gluttons isn't really strong? Right now, theirs is what you're talking about. Theirs is a 1 per model there, Marty.
Right.
Right? Because they go from 12 to 18. But, it's still really strong. So, anyways.
Yeah.
OC can matter if they had made it matter a lot. If it really would have been impactful in a big way and interactive, and they would have tilted the game more toward where we were in more protracted, careful fights, I would have moved it into great. But I think where it is right now is it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. All right. My next category, Marty, is missed the mark. Okay. We're not into terrible yet, but these are like, you missed it there. Effectively, these are things that I think right now are bad, but could be easily fixable. Okay? These are like not working, or not working as intended, or not working properly. Like they're bad, or they're off balance, or they're off kilter in some way. Right? But they're easily fixable. Like we could make the changes tomorrow to fix these. All right? Okay. So here we go. Number 1, Marty. Let's get into it. Here it is. We've gotten there. Army building. Specifically, heroes and their regiments. I hate it.
Yeah. So there's a few things, because it's like, well, if 1 hero equals 1 drop most of the time, like I do like that they open the door for certain heroes of acknowledged lesser value to be included as part of a drop for a larger heroes pod. That needs to be opened up to more heroes. Or I'm sorry, am I getting ahead of myself? Or we have not
No, you're good.
addressed the
You're
problem?
exactly in the right place.
Yeah, and so you not only do heroes have an added value factor that you need to assess after, like when you're looking at its war scroll and you're reading its abilities, it's like, is this worth taking my army from a 2 drop to a 3 drop, or a 3 drop to a 4 drop?
Yep.
And the answer,
I'm gonna let you in a
most of the
secret here, Marty. Let me just jump in real quick.
yeah.
The heroes equals drops is actually in the next category of being terrible, but this is part of it. So like I'm kind of split here. Okay, you're right. You
Okay.
were right to break it
Yeah.
apart, but yes, like okay.
Yeah.
Let me jump back a step real quick, because you're going where I
Yeah.
want, but you're going there faster than I want it. So let me jump in here real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Some armies have heroes that are just like, take anything you want. I don't care. Right? They just like whatever, go nuts. Like I'm a hero of this army. Have a good time, right? or you can take any of the units you would naturally want to, right? Some armies are like, you can take this specific thing and only this specific thing, and it's very limited, right? So that's number one. There's like a very much a have and have-nots. Two, the presence and absence of bonus heroes and where bonus heroes can be and the justification for what's a bonus hero and what's not seems completely arbitrary and nonsense. Right?
And then a good example.
Go ahead.
A perfect example is like when the points first went public, I was talking to John Anderson about Deepkin, and there are 2 heroes in the Deepkin index, which are those little like dinky heroes that can be included in other people's drops. I think it's Lotan and the Akelian Thrallmaster, but they have different names. Or it's like, well, you can include 0 to 1 Huntmaster, whatever it's called, where it's like, well, that only is the Akelian Thrallmaster. Whereas like Lotan can be included in more of those. It's like there seems to be an uneven delineation where it's like these lesser heroes can be taken in other drops, and just makes it more confusing. There should be universal terminology within an index for those characters.
Yep. And like, we're gonna save the heroes equals drops thing. Let's save that for the next page, okay? Because we're gonna deep dive into that there. But I've got one more thing for you here on the army building. So we've got the inequity between armies. Some armies build really easily, some build really hard, right? Some have great bonus heroes, some have crap bonus heroes, right? Okay. Here's another one for you, Marty. You ready? How many units are you putting in your general's regiment these days when you build a list?
When I'm playing something that is or is not S2D, because in Slaves to Darkness, I'm actually finding there was a one-day tournament where we were every Slaves to Darkness player was a 1-drop army, and so they were taking Archeon or Bellicor and then filling it out.
Outside of the S2D 1-drop nonsense, yes.
So sometimes like it's the and I didn't know what category you wanted to put this in, is that the prevalence of War Master forces you.
It's here in the Miss the Mark. Yes, that's also part of this. War Master is a separate line, but it's here. Yeah, keep going. Go.
Yeah. So it's like I don't have control over who my general is, and then the size of my general's pod is determined by who my general is. If I had the opportunity to make a different character my general, then I might be able to put the units I want in my general's pod. And I don't. Like the Lumineth list I'm working on to take to an event in September, I only have Severith, because Severith is my general, and then 1 Fox, because Severith's pod is very limited. And there's only like another unit in there. Like I would have preferred maybe the Lord Regent, because the Lord Regent has actually 3 units in his pod, and that would actually have interesting counterplay using the season rules. And now it's just like I have two models in my general's pod. Sorry, regiment. I like using the pods, but oh well.
I knew what you meant. Yeah, at this point, how I'm trying to build all my lists, this is kind of my list strategy, right? In general, if I can, is I'm trying to build my lists with 2 heroes and 4 units. The general's regiment has 1 in it. Everything's reinforced if possible, right? And that's kind of where I want. I want to get as close to 2,000 as I can on that. On 4 units and 2 heroes. I want 6 things in my army, right? Because maybe 7. If I have to put a second thing in there, if I'm forced, it'll go in the general's regiment, so I don't have to add another drop. I'd rather have a second unit in there than a drop. But because of the current season, being in the general's regiment is poison, right? It opens you up for a battle tactic. It makes you a priority target, right? It's just terrible. It's awful to be in the general's regiment, right? Now, again, that is just the current season rules, not AOS 4. But it's just funny to me that they wrote this new rule and then immediately put a poison pill in the first season right into the rules, right? Now, that'll change.
So, yeah, I don't want to call I hesitate to call it a poison pill, because I think especially, and maybe this is because Nighthaunt synergizes with the season rules too well, is that they're using the bodyguard rule for the -1 attack, so long as your general is within 3 inches of the bodyguard unit, which tends to be a giant blob of either Grimghast Reapers or Dread Scythe Harridans. And so all of a sudden, if you want to fight that main blob that is going to be coming at you relatively quickly, you're already at -1 attack. And so I think that's probably like not the worst position to be in. I get what you're saying, where you're giving up a battle tactic. You're opening yourself up to being hit by an enemy bodyguard using one of the buff rules. But it they have that luxury because certain armies have the ability to have a general, which opens up a bountiful a bountiful general's regiment. If you don't have access to that, then the season rules, you don't even get to use them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What I'll say is, by the way, I don't think I would ever take that. That what you put in your general's regiment in Nighthaunt is you take Oleander and you put 10 Hex Race in there, and you make them and you give them priority target. That's the choice, like every time, by default, right? But
Okay.
sure.
But then I played against something different last weekend where I was just like, eat -1 attack. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
I had an edge.
But nonetheless, like the point is that as per usual, they've once again done the thing they do, as people have said in the chat. Thank you, chat. By the way, hit like, hit subscribe, hit things that make dings if you haven't already, everybody. Good, very, very great chat tonight. You guys are all killing it. They once again make a season or have a new rule, have a focus, and then immediately blow themselves up by adding a season rule that's just like, and that's why I call it a poison pill. Because when I was first building armies, I was doing like, oh, neat, my general's regiment can have 4 things, and I put 4 things in there. And then I realized, wait a minute, I am opening myself up to just getting hammered, right? It makes no sense. Like, why not restrict and make it almost impossible for your opponent to pick up that battle tactic? And at the same time, make it so they can't choose priority target and get any value out of it. Like, so that's such a restrictive list building for, like, you can build anything between the combination of how it works and the new season rules. It's insane. It's insane. Hey, Z Ramirez, thank you very much. Super chat for the boys. Thank you, Z Ramirez. Much appreciated as well. Kendrick White with a super chat. Thank you, sir. He said, hey, Vince, you're the GOAT. Thank you for everything you do. Has Scott sent you the golden tendy yet? You rock too, Marty. I hope you gentlemen have a great night. Well, it's great so far. It's a good discussion. The chat's awesome. Everybody's hopping tonight. It's amazing. Thank you for the super chats, gentlemen. You're both heroes.
Yeah, I do wish I could see the comments. I tried turning on my television and 2 things on the Warhammer Weekly feed at the same time. Just couldn't make it work.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so, these season rules will go away, but it's just really annoying. So anyways, that sucks. You're supposed to be able to, like, oh, build your army however, and it's like, nope. Or build your army under this extremely restrictive thing if you want that stuff. Avos, what about auxiliary units? Never heard of them. They don't exist. They do not exist.
Yeah, that's a gameplay cue of please play with the pods.
Yeah. Mr. Morden, sorry to ask, but what's a good 2K Be'lakor list? Oh boy, Be'lakor and 12 Varangard. Like, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
But don't take that because that'll probably get nerfed. Like, real answer would be like Be'lakor, probably I do think reasonably a unit of Varangard has a place in there. A couple units of Chaos Knights. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that the second hero, like you only do a 2-drop, and your second hero was a Sorcerer Lord.
Yep.
And so you have you have something that can hold the backfield with maybe it's like a unit of 10 Chaos Warriors. Like, that's the scenery piece is actually very useful tool for a castle of like a Sorcerer Lord and 10 Nurgle Warriors sort of thing, because the Sorcerer Lord can always get the casting bonuses off of it.
That's right.
And then he's powering up the scenery piece as well to kind of get like a mini Seraphon ability, like the Seraphon do with the pyramid, where it's like I can just pick a piece of terrain and I can zap it, sort of thing. And it's like so I think Be'lakor, some Varangard, a Sorcerer Lord, some Chaos Warriors. Try and find room for Furies.
Yeah, Furies are a great include, 100%. Yep. Go out and get the gold. They sit on the flanks. They get you the gold.
Yeah. Furies or Fell Riders.
Yep. 100%. Oh, yeah, Fell Riders are a good call. They're actually a great grab as well. I think either one of them are really strong in that role. In that sort of sit on the flanks, take the flanks, take their land, whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah. All right. Okay. Here's my next miss the mark. We've beaten army building into the ground. We've got some problems. We still haven't plumbed the bottom of it. We're going to talk about. We're going to go to the next level of it in on the next page, Marty. But here we go. Miss the mark. Underdog. Underdog. Just period.
Yeah.
Too easy to get. Way too restrictive way too beneficial in certain scenarios. 5 of the scenarios have underdog that's just like stupidly powerful. Like it's insane.
Yes.
You should just absolutely play to be the underdog and then take it and ruin your opponent's whole career.
Like, we were talking earlier about command points, and one of the things that, like, because command points are so valuable now, not only is there a baked-in scenario bonus that you take advantage of in a lot of these for being the underdog, but you also gain access to a 5th command point, and you can also gain access to a command point for being at 1950. So all of a sudden, you could have this advantageous thing where you have like 50% more command points than your opponent during a certain battle round. Like,
sure. Yep. No, underdog is silly, and it leads right into the next one, which is the double turn in battle tactics. I'll tell you right now, when I outdrop my opponent, okay, and then force them into being on the first turn position, especially if they haven't built to be able to do first turn battle tactics well, right?
Yeah.
Or it's one of the scenarios where a couple of the first turn battle tactics are really hard. The reality is, I'll take the double turn every time, almost every time, because like if I go bottom of 1 and I'm able to double turn them into 2, yeah, like.
Yeah, I took photographs of each of the score sheets because I was using the Dorkdom Gaming TM score sheet. Thank you.
Nice.
And I was taking photos of it after my games, and I'd have to get out of this to look at each of them, how often I took the double turn. And one of the things that you can build a list for is that, well, if you're like Slaves to Darkness players who are going 1 drop, for example, are trying to hedge giving away top of 1 98% of the time,
Sure,
and then being in a position where worst case scenario, my opponent goes after me at the top of turn 2, and I'm not in a bad position because I will get all of my command points back, and I'm going to have access to those command points to cast a spell and countercharge. And if you are if in like a regular, like whatever, if you have outdropped your opponent, you've given them top of 1, you can score in a way where it's like, all I have to do is not score 10 points. I can collect the underdog bonus, and then if I win priority, I'm going to take it. I'm going to use the underdog bonus and the double turn against them
I'm
to
gonna
try
break
and
your back. Just especially with like a massive Baron guard. Now's the time. I've got the double. We're juiced up again. I've already probably hurt you last round, chewed around the edges. Now we go in whole hog, double pile in. Let's go nuts. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the only thing stopping you from doing that is maybe specific scoring in a tournament pack where you're trying to chase 50-point games, but you don't have to if you can just win by like 30 points anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Because the differential is what matters to actually achieving the major. So just like when you can get under, like you let your opponent go first, they score, let's say 10 points. Let's say it's a map where they can get 10 points on the first turn, right? Which is fairly doable in most maps. They get 10 points in your turn, score 8. Free underdog in round 2. If you win the priority, take it. Double them. Who cares about the battle tactic? On average, people are only getting 4 battle tactics a game anyways. Okay, even the 5-0 players are only getting 4 battle tactics a game. So, and why is that? Well, I suspect it's because they're double turning and just giving 1 away. And you just take the top of 2, break their back, smash them, win the game. Like, they're not going to recover. And then you just score out from there. Like you're down 6 points, they're down an army. You'll make up the 6 points because then you can just 10 out every turn from there.
And the other thing about a double turn is that you're skipping an opportunity for a battle tactic, which means that you have the option. You have more choices in later.
You don't waste anything. Yeah. And I agree, Josh. Josh said that. So what I mentioned these missed the mark. I think they all have easy fixes. Army building, by the way, stop the current season rules just need to go away with the priority target thing, or it needs to be changed. It's way too good and strong and too much of a poison pill. Like whatever. But they could fix the army building. They could make it so you have better choices. Even out when we move from indexes to books, please even out the choices in the armies. Underdog should be a threshold, right? Like it should just be a threshold that you that like you have to be X number of points down before you're the underdog, right?
Yeah.
It can't just be it can't just be down 2. You got to be like significantly down, right? How do you fix the double turn battle tactic thing? I'm not sure. I could probably spit out 4 or 5 different options, but like it should be fixed. If we're gonna keep it, which I think we should, then we like the current disincentive is nothing. It's nothing. Like it needs to be a more painful hit if you're gonna take it. If we're gonna make this real, War Master, like it's cute that they auto become the general. Don't. Just maybe don't. Like maybe you can still just be the general, you know, something like that. Like maybe not that.
Like like I get that we uncoupled heroic traits, like the classic command traits and magical artifacts, which usually went on like your army's general anyway, whether they were like, you know, your mini orc mega boss that's not going to be your maw crusher or whatever. But you uncoupled that from being on the general, but then you took away our ability to choose our general anyway. That needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Yeah. And like I understand they're doing it for I assume some kind of verisimilitude reasons, like oh if Shalaxi's there, she's such a powerful named character that she would automatically take control of the force, right? Or Archeon or somebody like that. But the reality is they throw War Master around quite a lot, and by the way, I have a character that's my Keeper of Secrets. Maybe my Keeper of Secrets is cooler in my story than Shalaxi. Right? Because aren't we supposed to be building an army that tells our story, our take on the world, our heroes? Okay. So who's to say my generic Keeper of Secrets that I've built, that's Schmashmaxi Schmelbane, isn't even more super duper and awesome and self-insert than Shalaxi? Not that Shalaxi's like a character in any real way, shape, or form, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Like exactly. Bronner says it should be a buff, not a restriction. Agreed. Like, let the War Master have an extra regiment slot or something like that. Great. Cool. Fine. Right? Neat. Like, there could be 100% of things that we do here that isn't auto become the general. So I think it's just a bad choice. So just change that rule. All right, here's my next one that missed the mark. And we knew this one was going to be the case. This was inevitable. I am inevitable. Marty, in time, you will come to learn what it means to fail. To believe so desperately that you're right, and to lose all the same. Dread it, run from it. In the end, imbalanced indices arrive. So, index balance. Like just
Sure.
You know, we're just not. We're not there.
We thankfully did not launch with an index with a win rate above 70%, like some Games Workshop games.
Sure,
but
that's not a good bar.
Yes, that's not a good bar. Here we are with Ghosty Boys, Buki, terrifying everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah. It is lonely at the top of the mountain, and it is covered in ghosts.
Sure. I mean, they have friends up there. There's some elves hanging out with them up there. There's a weird chicken monster.
What is it with Vince and Tom disliking Lumineth? I'm shocked.
I'm just saying that's what the stats say. Okay, I'm
shocked. I say.
I don't even hate playing Lumineth in fourth. Most of the like horrible NP is gone. I've played Lumineth a couple of times. It's been a perfectly fine, fun game.
Yeah.
Big blocks of Dawn Riders are like pretty awful, but it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
but yeah, like we've, if 45 to 55 is the goal, we definitely missed that. If the old fat middle was our goal of 40 through 60, we definitely missed that, right? We're definitely
Mhm.
operating in the 35 to 65 space here at best,
Yeah.
right?
Now, I did have a note on this because I was thinking about this earlier today. And we touched on it earlier about unit roles. So we live in a new era for this edition where there are at least there's better ways to eyeball a unit's role in its abilities and its stats, etc., because they're so streamlined and easy to read.
Yep.
Uh, you're looking for a unit in indexes which can get battle tactics without much interference from
Sure.
counterplay. I forget if you came up with a name for them. Not every army has access to that.
Yeah, sure.
I think we've moved
We do
past
need a
this
name for
idea
that,
because
Marty. You're
yeah,
right. We do need a name for
yeah.
that. The units
I
that go
think
get your gold. I think we should call them like
yeah,
what would be a good name for that? Your gold diggers. Yeah, that's it.
yeah,
You got to have your gold diggers, right? Yeah. Because
yeah,
that's what they do. These are your Night Haunt, Dreadblade Harridans or whatever. This is your
yeah. Your
Furies in
Riverblade,
S2D.
Harridans, yeah,
Yep.
and so it's like Dreadblade Harrows,
Yes, they are.
Riverblades, Chaos Furies. Um, we used to, and if I that's why I say I have some notes here. It's like when Age of Sigmar was still like transferring over from fantasy and rebooting things. We were looking for, it's like, well, this faction doesn't have a heavy cavalry equivalent. This faction doesn't have a skirmisher equivalent. We're past looking for those because each army now has its own identity instead of being a successor from fantasy. But I think we're at a position now where it's like, well, if your army has a gold digger, why don't storm like why don't fire slayers have a gold digger? Why don't
Hold on. Adam said
yeah,
prospectors. I love prospectors. Yes, we gotta get out. That makes me think of like old timey. Well, we're
yeah,
paying the river today. Okay, so yes, so if your army doesn't have prospectors, let's do prospectors, everybody. Prospectors
okay.
is the thing. I love it. Yes,
I
Branu,
think
I
those
see
are
you. If
swap.
that's a Planescape reference to the Faded, we're friends now. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. I do think prospectors is like a unit name in Necromunda or something, so I don't know. But like you get what I'm saying, right? It's just like certain armies now need their prospector unit. Their
Yeah,
skirmisher, their tactics go getters, their gold diggers, and they don't have them.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's harder. Yeah. Like do Slanesh have a unit which can do that?
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay. Then what are you
It's
doing with the analysis paralysis over here?
it, because I had to warp my list into realizing that I had to
Uh-huh.
have two of these units
Yeah.
and they had to work in very specific ways and
Yeah.
discover that play pattern, right? Because it's not
All
as
right.
obvious in that list. They're not as immediate. But yes, there is absolutely. There's two different prospectors in Slanesh that are actually quite good. So
Yeah.
so
But like fire slayers or something, it's just like some armies just don't have that, and now they need it.
right. Stealth Monkey 85 says Stormcast Prosecutors.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so index balance is way off, but again, that can be fixed. Like that will be fixed. Battle scrolls will come out, things will change. Like I'm not worried about it. We missed the mark, but it'll get brought in time. Here's my next one, Marty, and this is one that makes me the most sad. Okay,
Surprising.
Artifacts, heroic traits, and subfactions. We cut
Yeah.
every army down to basically three each of these, with a few exceptions. Right? Like you
Yeah.
have three artifacts, three heroic traits, four subfactions. It's more or less the template. Few exceptions, but that's more or less the template.
Yeah.
How did we still screw this up so bad to where 9 out of 10 indices, you look at them and go, that heroic trait, that's the good one. That's the
Okay.
only one. Or I guess that one's fine. That's your worst case. When I read the Slanesh ones, I'm like, that one, I guess, is fine. Like, I'm not excited about it, but it's
Yeah.
fine, I guess. When your best is like a 6 and the other ones are 2s. How does this occur?
So the only thing I can think of in terms of an answer to that question, I didn't think you were going to go there for this for lot because there's a few ways we can approach this. But the only thing I can think of is that they are thinking about because the each of these is just one rule. Like they're not robust. They're not actual sub factions.
Sure.
They're bolting on one special rule for a play style, and so it's like they're thinking, well, if the units in this index have a above par stats, like for Slaves to Darkness, for example, why would they want to add a multiplicative or what's it, not power projection, a force multiplier? Why would they
Sure.
want to add a force multiplier in the form of a powerful command trait when it's like, well, there's going to be a character behind these 6 Varangard and
Mm-hmm.
Chosen and Warriors,
Sure.
and that's the only reason I can think of why they just decided to make these things for that specific thing. Does that make sense? It's like
It does, but it shows a lack of vision. Okay, I'm
okay.
gonna explain this by way of analogy. We've
Yeah.
got 3 different problems here, or 2 different problems here. Artifacts and heroic traits just are mostly highly inequitable. There are some armies that have like 2 quite good ones and 1 that's average, and there are some armies that have 1 that's like at best average and 2 crap ones in that list.
Yeah.
They're just so inequitous. I can't believe we couldn't write 3 interesting ones that play into 3 different roles of 3 different ways you actually might play the army. It's mind-boggling and unfathomable to me. Okay,
Yeah.
as someone who writes like equipment lists and artifact lists and things like that in every book we've designed, right? And is everyone I write a winner? No, but there's lots of them that are winners. Like
and I think a part of your frustration is that we're in 2024. We're in the 4th edition of Age of Sigmar, and yet we're seeing like the same inequity that we had in Warhammer Fantasy 10, 15 years ago.
Correct.
Why is this not changed? Yeah.
Correct. Exactly right. Yes, 1,000% yes, Marty. The sub-factions is different because that's a failure of a higher order of magnitude. Because what they had the chance to do with sub-factions was reinforce the way, the role, the function of the army. And you might say, like, let me build on your thought there. But you say to me, but Vince, it's like one rule. What can you do with one rule? Mm-hmm. Marty, are you familiar with this game called Magic: The Gathering? Have you heard of it?
Okay. A little bit.
Yeah. Tuck in, everybody, for the second Magic analogy of the show. Here we go. Hit like for Vince going on a Magic rant. Okay. Yeah. So you're aware that there is a very popular...
Before I quoted Star Trek. Let it be known.
You're aware, Marty, that there's a very popular format you may have heard of called Commander. You heard of this format? It's been going around. It's kind of underground right now, but some people know about it. Okay.
I may have witnessed 2 Commander games at a Warhammer tournament last weekend. And by that,
I'm bringing my Commander decks to NashCon. So if you're going to be there and you've got Commander decks, bring some decks. We'll get a game in. Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to give you a sample Commander. One of my favorite Commanders from the game. You ready? Here it is. His name is Ishin Two Heavens is one. He's based on yes, based on a very famous Japanese swordmaster, right? Okay. So Ishin's rule, I'll sort of roughly quote it here, is whenever a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. That's it. That's all the rules text printed on his card. Right? It's like 13 words or something. Yeah?
Yeah.
It is an insanely powerful commander that you can build around in 20 different ways with like tons of different decks. But do you know what it encourages you to do? Attack.
Yeah.
Right? It encourages you to go fight because things happen when you attack, and so hence double trigger it, right? Or people attack you can also trigger it and stuff like that, right? But the point is that it's one rule, and there are a ton of different decks you can build out of that guy. All right?
Yeah.
I love my Ishin deck. It's terrible. It's one of my worst decks. Because I built it in one of the stupidest ways possible. Because I like building things that are bad and on theme. Darwin, don't worry, it wouldn't be insta kill in my deck, I promise. But like the point is that you don't need a lot of space to write a rule that completely changes the way you build a thing, right? They could do the same thing here, right? They could have sub-factions that are like, when you charge and blah this, when you are charged, or, maybe and blah this, right? Okay? When you, when you kill a unit, when you fight with a hero, like, all of these would lead to different builds. You get what I'm saying? Like they could have leaned more on the rolls as opposed to particular units. Way too often we're still, like, making you want to play individual things. Bug writers or something like that, or these particular things.
Yeah.
They could have made it so you actually, like, change the way the army plays in some significant way, or let me say it this way. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it. Instead, I'll say reinforce a particular play pattern, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And like a good example would be like the way that the Lumineth, like, that's one of the main ways I'm critical perhaps of their design, where the Facets of War, it's like, well, Lumineth had too many special rules in second and third edition. We've kind of kept those, but we're changing how often you can activate them and who can they go on. Like, example, Shining Company has to be turned on, Power of Heich has to be turned on, etc. And so all of the main sub factions are, you just get to use one of those for free. And so it's like, all you're doing is just making the toolbox a little wider. It's not as, we're not changing how they play.
Right.
Like, yeah. Whereas with
let me give you a sample one. Here you go. Let's say you've got, like, a relatively fast army that wants to get into combat, right? And that's sort of one of its major play patterns. Okay. Your sub faction is called, like, Hunters for Glory. The first unit that charges each round, in each turn, gets a +3 to their charge. Okay? Which would be interesting because it would work off turn, right? So if you countercharge, you get that bonus.
Yeah.
It would only affect one unit, but it encourages you to do a very specific thing every round. Now, that's a very sort of rote, simple implementation of what I'm talking about. But my point is, like, that's the kind of thing you could do, right?
Yes.
And we just didn't do any of that. Or we did very little of it, I'll say.
We're not expanding upon play styles enough with the sub factions.
Right. Exactly. Zanbin says, do that through the basic keywords like infantry, cav, ranged, etc., or do that through some other way, Vince. Yeah, exactly. You could do yes and 100%. Right? Yes, I am concerned by your lack of vision. Yes, I am. But at any rate, yeah, so that whole section is just like, miss the mark, do better in the books. That's all I can say. Like, just do better. And certain things should just be straight out. Once a game, get rid of that crap. Just period on these things. Or if you're going to make it once a game, if there has to be a once a game effect, it better be plenty big, and it better not be pinned to a random roll. There is literally nothing worse they can write than once a game, roll a die, and some percentage nothing happens. Get out of here. Get out of here. Right? So, there you go. So, fine. Yeah, Josh, sure. It could be a new ability. That's fine. You could do that. It could say the first time you use a charge ability, you get this bonus. Like, there's ways you could structure it to pull on the abilities. At any rate. And again, it's not all of them. Some of them are better than other. There are some, I do want to be clear that there are some armies that actually have sub-factions that do this pretty well, and there are some that just don't. So. Okay. The last one on Miss the Mark. Here we go. Here we go, Marty. Manifestations.
I don't have too much of a comment here because I've been playing games where they are not as relevant for my own army. That being said, I am seeing all of these instances where it's like, oh, I'm just going to summon one off turn, going to charge block, stuff like that, and all of these, So I can imagine they're free chaff, they're free summonable chaff, and sometimes they do wacky things, and that's maybe not as intended.
Yeah, manifestations. Where'd we miss the mark here? Like, conceptually, the idea of let's make endless spells a bigger part of the game is a cool idea. So conceptually, I like the concept. I don't know that I love everybody. Yeah, you're good, buddy. You're good. Uh, I don't know that I love the idea that suddenly every one of my armies I have to paint up 3 more of these dumb things for everything, like I had to do for my Slanesh this weekend. Right? Look at that giant wad of bubble gum. So much gum. Um, like, and if I don't show up, if I don't show up with them in a bit, I'm just like at a penalty. Uh, so like the feeling of auto inclusion, I'm not sure I love. The I don't love how imbalanced they are. Like obviously, Morbid and Primal are like way stronger than everything else. Morbid
Yeah.
feels like way beyond the box too strong. One, because there's 4 of them, and 2, because there are like many good ones in there. Primal is
Yeah.
just like a strong one in general. So like most of the army specific ones, by the way, are actually fine. They're fine because they're mostly like much less infuriating. It's really just Morbid and and Primal that are bad. They have lots of things that are in your face. I hate when there's like 6 of them flooding the board, and a bunch of them are also like mobile attacking ones, and suddenly the middle of the board is just full of manifestations cruising everywhere.
Yeah. And
Right?
also, you can have duplicates now. Like both players can have the same version of the
Sure.
spell on the table. Yeah, like because the only thing that I noticed as maybe a critique of that is uh, um, it's hard to get 6 manifestations on the table because you're not always running a spell dom army, which means that manifestations aren't always the easiest to cast, especially if you're -1 to cast doing it off turn. The fact that you can do it off turn, period, might be still too strong,
It's too
but
strong. You
you're
shouldn't be
also
able to summon them off turn.
yeah,
Period. You just shouldn't.
yeah. Um, but you're still relying on the fact, like, unless if you don't have any casting bonuses, the manifestations are coming out slower. I don't think that's always the issue, but like I'm not seeing them all over the board all the time. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You're playing different games than I am. I'll say that. In a lot of my games, I'm seeing 6 of these dumb things roam around.
Oh, remember, I'm also piloting Bellacorn 12 Varangard. I don't really have a use for endless spells. I'm just gonna hit
Sure.
you.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Um, yeah. So just like what needs to be fixed. You shouldn't be able to like banish and resummon them in the same turn. Like they shouldn't be able to be killed
Yeah.
and resummoned in the same turn. That's another clear miss, right there. So like I think these things are fixable, right? Like
Hmm.
we can get these to a place where they are an interesting part of the game, even if they do feel like kind of sucky that you have to include them. But it's just I and somebody had said, who said it? Gary, there you go. The manifestation power balance is wrong. The generic should suck and your faction should be good. Yeah, I agree. Like you should want to take your indexes items, your indexes manifestations, ideally more than you want to take the generics, but you don't right now. Like it's almost everything is worse than Morbid, and most are worse than Primal. So I think we could fix this though. Like Morbid needs to be reined in, stop the off-turn casting. You can't resummon in a turn where you do it. I think generally the cast value on these should be moved up so they're harder to get out. Yeah, and then like as Jenna said, how fixable are they when half the people in my play group can't even get a box of them? Yeah, the fact that they didn't even make these things widely available, as I said was going to happen, right? And like, ugh, and only one
Yeah,
control per
that was
wizard.
part of the joke. Like, if there's a conspiracy that Games Workshop did this on purpose to sell them, it's like they didn't sell anything. We
Right.
all had these in the same box from 2018,
Yeah,
and
and
we're
they
finally
failed to
using
put
them.
out like basically any more to satisfy the demand. Yeah, Dougie, I agree
Yeah,
with you. One control per wizard. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Oh, and the last time they made Universal Endless Spells was Forbidden Power. Some people haven't been in the hobby long enough to even know what that is.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Just a real whiff. It could be fixed, but boy, did it miss the mark so far. Right. It's just like just a wild swing and a miss out of the gate here. So, yep. Okay. Now, Marty, we come to it. Uh, okay. Now we come to the just plain bad. Okay? This is just plain
Okay.
bad. Just good old fashioned bad. Number one, the retirement of armies and the parts of armies and the messaging that was around it. I'm not letting him go off this. It was bad.
Yeah, I was about to say, you please refer to the past Warhammer Weekly episode where you guys talked about this for over an hour.
Mhm.
Rightfully so. I don't think that it's but like it shouldn't go like there's certain things that like this did not used to be part of our fandom. One of the things that made Warhammer relatively like had longevity is that even if Games Workshop was making new miniatures, they made room in the rules for you to keep using your old ones.
Sure.
If you had sentimental attachment to things that they didn't hadn't made in like 10, 15 years, it wasn't going to be very powerful, or it's like you could still use this on a different base. You could still use that old Beast Lord from 2005 or something like that in your Age of Sigmar army. You can still use Age of Sigmar Stormcast from first edition in your new Stormcast armies. And it's like, after a certain point, yeah, there is a little bit too much bloat. Maybe we need to do a better job, or Games Workshop needs to do a better job at combining indexes, combining armies into broader playsets. Like
Right.
we had this with Auric War Clans, but now we're getting to a point where brand new models can't even live more than 6 years without being retired without clear explanation as to why.
Yep. Agreed. So, like, again, I don't want to like get into it too deeply because we did do a big
Mm-hmm.
rant on it, but yes, just like it was just plain bad. And I have no defense for it, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, now let's get into some newer thoughts here. Non-hero monsters. Marty, what is the point of these things in the current edition of this game?
That was is that's a good question. Adding in the current edition of the game,
Mm-hmm.
do you like hitting on fours?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They all hit on fours. They all don't do enough damage. Like, what non-hero monsters, actual monsters from across all indices, are worth putting in a list? I'm not gonna. There's not zero.
About,
There is some,
yeah.
but what are they?
Ones that don't hit on fours, like a Cow
Well,
Mountain hits on threes.
yeah, I was gonna say. I think Alarith, the Spirit of the Mountain, could clear that bar. So in other words, not whatever what's the named one called?
Avalanor.
Avalanor. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think they both sound like they have names, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But they don't.
A
Um,
regular Spirit of the Mountain.
a regular
Yeah.
Spirit of the Mountain. Yes, exactly. I think he could clear the bar and show up in a list. Uh, uh
I think
oh, there
all
you
of the
go.
other options. What? Oh,
Maybe Pat Glacken said Bastillodon. Yeah, maybe the Basti. Sure. Okay. Uh,
but they have utility beyond their stat line. So there's a good answer to your question.
sure.
Non-hero monsters which have utility beyond their combat stat line are things worth at least thinking about when building an army. If you're trying to take a non-hero monster for its damage output, I better not see a 4+ anywhere on its attack bar. Or
Sure. It's just so easy for you to end up on like fives really fast. I mean,
yeah,
I guess baby giants in the baby giants and Sons of Bahamut, they're technically non-hero monsters, and like a pack of three babies is actually a pretty good thing because you can chain activate them along with a
yeah,
mega, which is really strong. So you can fight with 1,000 points of your army before they fight at all. So like that's pretty strong. The IDK turtle, yeah, the turtle, that's a good one. Turtle, yeah. G Well with the $5 super chat. Any idea why Sanct got removed specifically? Model bloat and Stormcast. We don't know. I'm assuming.
yeah.
Go ahead, Marty. Do you have any knowledge?
I do think it was because they tried to formalize the aesthetic of the army, most of the sacrosanct stuff, and it's the problem is that this is not universal. There are certain characters which are still around from 1.0, like all of the Vanguard Chamber, but I do think it's the armor design, and like I'm pretty set in my opinion, thinking that in 3 years when we're here again, thank you capitalism for 3-year edition loops, just keeping us in the one book, one model hard rotation. is that Sacrosanct is just going to come back, and like they're all going to have.
Sure.
We have an Underworld's Warband right there from last year, which includes evocators, Sacrosanct models in the new armor pattern.
Yeah.
And today, there was, I think, a retailer sort of mishap where they got to see the Stormcast version of the Space Marine heroes that are coming like to
Oh,
bookstores and like there.
yeah.
And there's also another Sacrosanct model in there in the 3.0 armor. So I just think that they're not.
Won't that just be the ultimate kick in the teeth? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think it's consolation. It's not like a saving grace.
No,
And like it's
absolutely
still
not.
it's
Yeah.
like we're sacrificing stuff like this just to make sure that the aesthetic is more consistent.
Right.
I'm yeah, that's a weird reason.
Yeah. So that's I guess that's our best answer, G Well. I mean, I wish I knew more. I'd love to know the backstory of it. We'll know in like 10 years when somebody retires and can tell the story. Like how we know now the story behind a bunch of stuff in the 90s because that channel did interviews with like all the GW staff from the 90s. Like it's crazy. That dude got like all the inside scoops on everything. If you want to know the background, there's a wild channel full of interviews that like no one watches.
Yeah.
But like it's a really it's good. It's amazing interviews. I disagree. Trosty on Gothazar Harvester. Sadly, I don't think he's worth it. So I think really the list is about 5 monsters that are worth it. Everybody else, crap, forget it, get out of here. What are you doing with your life? You're Garbo. You're just Garbo in this edition, almost base. You're overcosted and you don't do enough damage, and that's it. Okay, that's number 1. The next one, Marty, is in the same thing. You ready? Combat foot heroes, and this relates directly, and let's just get right to it. It's 2 items down on the list, but let's just talk about it. Heroes equaling drops. Just plain bad.
Yeah.
All hero sections in the books now split into the following. You perform the following triage. Okay? Ready? Here's my triage of all heroes and all indices. Triage group number 1. You are good enough to be one of the 2 heroes I want to select. 2, you are a bonus hero and so worth including because you do something cool and you don't cost me a drop. Or you are so cool with the utility you offer that you are worth going to 3 drops. Right? Pure utility. Okay? 3, you're crap. Forget you. And that's 80% of the heroes are just like garbage you never take.
Yeah.
Period.
And points play in a factor is that as well, because there's certain characters like Enslaves to Darkness, like we've been talking about. There's some cool Dark Oath combos, but do I want my third drop, sorry, to be a 180 point character with a 5-up save?
Right.
Yeah. And so it's like some of the math here is just not working out. It's and like there's so many ways to fix this because there's so many ways in which it's almost insidious how lopsided some of the design for these these indexes are, like the pitch battle profiles.
Yep.
And like I'm looking at things like even in our most powerful factions right now, regardless of whether they need to be tuned or not. Like there's certain characters, even in Nighthaunt, where it's like, why are there so many characters where it's like, take whatever you want? Versus characters where it's like, well, you can take only infantry or only cavalry plus 0 to 1 black coach. Like, what kind of a regiment is that? Like, there's only like 2 cavalry options that aren't your model. It's
sure.
Yeah.
Yes, by the way, thank you, Albino, who said the channel that I was referencing was called Jordan Sorcery. Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, brother. Great chat tonight, everybody. You guys are all killing it. I love all this interaction. You guys have some really good thoughts. Thank you all for chiming in so much. It's amazing. Are the drop wars this real now? Outside of deciding turn orders, there's something I'm not seeing. Yeah, it's you want to decide turn order. Like they're very real. I've seen the stats, and the stats are a very tiny percentage of 1 drop. Okay, which is like basically S2D Archeon lists. Like it's minimal. We're talking like, low single digit percentage.
Yeah.
Then you have 40 some percent 2 drop and near 40 some percent 3-drop, and then almost nothing and long tail from there. That's it. That's the war.
Yeah.
Because deciding to go first is so powerful. Like not deciding priority, sorry, and being able to force the other person to go first, because shooting has been so diminished, Josh. Right? Like shooting is basically, the range has been shortened. It's not a big threat. You're not going to get lifted. Your heroes are guarded and don't exist. Most people's ranges can't even touch you across the DMZ. Okay? So you're not under real threat. Alpha strikes, movement ranges were reduced across the board. Alpha strikes hence become nearly impossible. So you are mostly safe without even heavy chaffing in your first turn. Okay? And so all you're doing by handing away the first turn is gaining pure advantage. You screw them over on the battle tactics they can do, because there's only 2 they can do. And they can only do those 2 if they're either 1, wanting to commit suicide with 2 of their units, or 2, have built their army exactly to take the flanks, which isn't possible in every scenario. So by handing them the first turn, you have put them in the worst possible position with almost no risk. And you get to determine, you set yourself up for the power double into 2 to break their back. And you get to set yourself up to score exactly 2 points under them, so that way you're the free underdog in turn 2. Right? Like, do I need to stop now?
Yeah.
This is the drop.
I'm sorry, continue.
No, that's it. That's my point. Like, I have just given you a laundry list of reasons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, continue.
Nope. The heroes equals drops thing is stupid. It makes 80% of the heroes completely irrelevant in a list. Yeah. They're ipsum lorem text. They're nothing. They're nothing. And you're living in Candyland if you think otherwise.
Yeah. Continue. Yeah.
No, that's all. I have gone on here for as long as I can. I want you to go.
There's just a frustration I have with when I'm building an army, and it's this confluence of factors where I want to take characters, or like there's characters like Elania and Elithor and the Light of Eltharion are just good examples where it's like I'm finally getting things that I wanted out of their War Scrolls compared to 3rd edition. Yep. They finally look like they're worth taking.
Agreed.
But then we've moved the goalposts, where it's like, well, now they have to fulfill multiple roles at the same time, because not only are they a deployment drop, but also they're determining, it's like, well, if I'm now going to a 3-drop, it means that I generally don't have a choice over whether I'm going first or second, which means that I now have to build a list. That's that I was trying to articulate, where it's like,
exactly,
there's strata of problems that cascade out from a handful of decisions that were made when designing army list building in this game. And now it's like the Marauder Horseman hero. I forget the name of the I think it's a Dark Oath Chieftain on Seed or something. He's now not worth it, even though his War Scroll has a very potent ability. But because he counts as he's going to be a 3rd drop, because you have Arcana Bellicor and then your Chaos Sorcerer Lord, it's now drop number 3. And you don't want to be a 3-drop because of how drops work. And then it's like, well, now I have to build stuff into this army, which already costs, like, now I have to sacrifice another 200 points to make sure that if I have to go first, I'm not failing a battle tactic out of the gate. Sort of thing.
No, exactly. You're exactly right. My Slanesh list I'm taking this weekend is a 3-drop list. It's a 3-drop list because I'm taking things that I want to take. Like, I'm going to play the army I want to play, okay? Like, I'm making a bunch of bad choices here. All right? Gonna give people 3 dice. Gonna running 3 drops. So I'll be going first, like, a lot of the weekend, right? And but I had to, like, warp my entire list to make sure that when handed the first turn, I will always be able to get my gold, right? I got to have them prospectors ready to go. So I have like three prospectors. I have two no, sorry. Technically I have four prospector units, but they can multi-role as chaff as well, right? So the like I had to build that deep into it just to make sure that I was like not screwed off the jump. Right? It decided most of my list right there.
In third edition, there was almost a rule where it's like you need at least 3.5 hammer units, and now you need like at least three, possibly four prospectors. And so it's like I have in my Lumineth list that I'm working on, which is a 3-drop. I don't care what turn order I have because I have 2 units of River Blades, which are like Shadow Warriors on steroids, and then I have 2 Foxes, which have the speed of like Chinook helicopters. They can be wherever they want.
Right. One other thing I will tell people, by the way, a real quick note on advice. If you're a 3-drop list and you roll up against a 2-drop list, you do not have to use the deploy battalion deploy ability. You can use the deploy unit ability. Okay? Like you don't or the deploy regiment ability, sorry. So like if they're going to outdrop you anyways, then just drop a single unit at a time. Just use deploy unit. Use that ability instead. You can use the single deploy unit instead of deploy regiment.
Yeah.
And just like that way you do get the ultimate knowledge of how, because then by the time you've set up your second whatever nothing chaff unit, they've had to set up their whole army. So at minimum you can recoup by like making sure you're in the best possible position against their army, which is like some advantage against them you can claw back. So just a note for folks out there. Like don't be, if you're 3-drops, don't set up your 3 regiments. Set up a unit and then add another unit and let them set up their whole army. So
yeah, you can bet that I'm not trying to race to. Yeah, it's something, especially like something fragile like Lumineth and things like that. It's like, yeah, I want to make sure I know where my opponent's going to be.
Yep. When do you find out number of regiments? When you rock up to the table and exchange lists. Like that's usually, most tournaments will say that's the sort of first step. Like you go up to the table and present your opponent with your list is generally what happens. Like all lists are public information, so they have you like your opponent has generally presented your list as part of handshaking and saying hello and things like that. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just bad, and there you go. I got a couple more here. You ready?
Yes.
We've already talked around this one, so I'll just say it. Battle tactics, especially the pressure on list building. These are seasonal, so they'll change. I don't like battle tactics. I still don't like them. I still don't like how heavy they are in scoring. I still think they put too much stress on you. The analysis paralysis and choice around them is so much heavier now because they're so easy to counter. You have to think through like 100 different things before you pick one, if you want to actually get it sometimes. And so like they drive me crazy. I wish they were different. I wish battle tactics were like a thing at the start of the game that you picked like 3 of, and over the course of the game you had to accomplish all 3 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I was
like on any
ask,
turn
like,
if you do these things.
This is something that I think you have to like reach out to the developers at a convention specifically, because it's like you could almost make an entire episode about things which could replace battle tactics.
Sure.
Because it's like, well, we need a secondary mechanic of some reason, and it's like, well, if you dislike battle tactics so much, what would you use instead? This is not the time to talk about that because it could be like its own like effectively thesis paper almost. It's like,
Absolutely.
what do you do for secondaries in a Warhammer game that isn't just killing your opponent?
Right. 100%. And by the way, some of it could be killing your opponent, but it just shouldn't be all killing your opponent. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's just it's mind-boggling to me that we're still dealing with this problem, but you know, here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like there you go.
The only saving grace I would say is I'd rather battle tactics be very hard than very easy, because when they're very easy, they're even more egregious because then we're just
Yeah, I agreed with that. Agreed with that completely. I just wish the sort of bar we were going for wasn't like you have this 1 round ticking clock to achieve this thing. You have to pick it. Once you've locked in, you're there. Assuming you're not playing Kairos Fate Weaver, you know, you're just screwed otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. My last one, ready for just plain bad, Marty? It's the lead up story, Broken Realms. Broken Realms is just a letdown story. I never did do Storytime Part 6. And
You mean
honestly,
Dawnbringer Crusade?
yeah,
Dawnbringer
whatever.
Crusades.
What did I call it? Yeah, sorry. I called it the wrong thing. Sorry. Dawnbringer. Yeah, you're right. That's what it was called. Sorry, I
Yeah,
couldn't even remember what it was called. It was so boring. There you go.
yeah.
Uh, it was just bad. It was a bad story. I never did the 6th part. I don't think anybody missed
Mhm.
anything. There's an explosion. They all die. Maybe there's penguins. Maybe there's not. Um,
As someone who is possibly more narratively inclined, but also more critical, can I offer a perhaps abridged critique there?
sure.
I think since the we have been focusing on keep making Warhammer Age of Sigmar as a game and brand more healthy and like then prioritizing its narrative. Games Workshop games are known mostly for their miniatures, but also the stories behind them. And since we've been focusing on making sure the game is as good as it can be as fast as possible, remember 6 years ago or whatever, like up until 2016, this game did not have points. We're in very different worlds now. I think there needs to be some sort of concentration by the developers to say, we're going to focus on a little bit more narrative products in conjunction with Age of Sigmar's game, the match play seasons, etc. 40K had two narrative books come out in the first year of 10th edition's release. Where was any of that for something like uh, Age of Sigmar, aside from the end of cycle? It's like, why are we only getting these narrative expansions at the end of an edition?
Yep.
People are less likely to buy them, and they seem to, and they have less narrative tension because we're only developing or moving the setting forward when we release a new edition, and at the very end where it's just like a bunch of things happen at the same time.
Yep.
Occasionally, we get. I'm sorry, I could go on about this for a while.
No, no. I'm with you.
Okay. Occasionally, there are good narrative beats. Like
Yep.
Broken, you mentioned Broken Realms because it's like the first book of Broken Realms had genuinely good fantasy writing, and that seems to be the exception to the rule. And it's like this is Games Workshop
There were good
that
story beats
yeah.
within Dawnbringers, mostly that were the asides, like the gods talking to each other and stuff like that. There were interesting
Mhm.
things, like Ionis and like the meeting of Ionis and Vandus Hammerhand was like a really good scene. It was really interesting. It communicated a lot about their personalities and where they've come on their journeys and stuff like that. But most of the
Mhm.
actual story was completely forgettable, nothing
Yeah.
garbo.
Yeah, and if I may just to dovetail with Broken Realms 1, great writing. And then one of the most important aspects of that narrative is the duel between Teclis and Nagash.
Yeah,
Not
man.
only did Nagash get killed off screen, basically, there was not a single piece of artwork. They used both models that they had in the Warhammer World Studio and a fog machine,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they took a photo of it. And it's like, what are you doing over here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was pretty big deal. Throwing or like when Eltharion kicks Arcan off the edge of the realm, basically, right out into endless light,
Yeah.
and like we're just like, whatever, it's fine, I'll be back, no big deal.
Yeah,
You
no
know,
art
just
for
like
that.
whatever.
No, there's a little bit of art for that. It was part of like a stone mosaic that they put on a wall in a Lumina temple somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So at any rate, better. Like I just like to see better stories, better narrative throughout the edition, better lead up stories, that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's my list of just plain bad. And with that, Marty, we've done it. We've done the good or the great,
yeah.
the it's fine, the not quite, the miss the mark, and the just plain bad. There you go. Was there anything else we didn't touch on, Marty, that you wanted to hit before we call it a night?
Not the. I would be retreading a little bit if I were to add things. So I think we're close enough to comprehensive.
Very good. All right. Well, all of you out there, if there's anything we missed or anything you disagree with, drop that down in the comments. Tell us all about it. I want to hear what you have to say. Thank you, chat. Thank you to all the super chatters with this new super chat thing going on. We really appreciate it. That's awesome. It is deeply appreciated. But everybody's been great. All the discussion this episode has been amazing. And I'm really grateful for all of you who stick with us every week, share your thoughts, share your opinions. It's absolutely fantastic. Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, share the video, do all those free things that make dings. It's really nice and helps other people find the channel, and we really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, lots of ways you can do so. You can, of course, subscribe and do those free things, but you can also look down in the description. What's down there but some affiliate links you can use to pick up your hobby supplies. Doesn't cost you anything extra, often saves you money. You can pick up a game from Uncle Adam and I. Those are down there. You can find our newest game, Death Wizards, game of necromantic skirmish combat, available down there. If you've got some death models you want to get a second use for, we got you covered. And of course, there's our Patreon, focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. But always, I thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Marty, for coming back on the show. You're always a great guest, and it's great to have you, buddy.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all out there for watching. We really appreciate it very, very much. I will be at a tournament this weekend. I will report back with my... I'll have at least 30 games after that, so that's cool. With how we did. NashCon's going to be amazing. I hope to see some of you there. For all the rest of you, we'll see you next Wednesday.